Hey guys, tonight we're going back to a time when winter didn't just mean layering up and sipping cocoa. It meant bracing for a slow, relentless season that picked off your neighbours one by one. It meant 6 months of choked lungs, frozen livestock, and wondering if the last turnip would hold out till Easter. You're about to experience what it was really like to be a medieval winter survivor, and here's a quick spoiler. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I don't need pity likes. I want that authentic late-night historical curiosity energy. Oh, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is, especially if it's already dark outside. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in a crooked wooden doorway, squinting out across the patchy, brittle fields of late October. The last sheaf of wheat has been bundled and dragged into storage, and your fingers are still sore from shelling beans and yanking up cabbages. Your muscles ache from threshing, from pulling, from the constant fear that you haven't done enough. You can feel winter just behind the horizon, not because of any weather app, obviously, but because of the way the wind changes. It's sharper now, like it wants to peel the skin from your cheeks. You know that in a few short weeks the sun will barely rise before it starts setting again. And worst of all, you remember last winter. Who didn't make it? The village is quieter than usual today. That odd kind of quiet that feels like something is listening. Everyone's busy, sharpening knives, patching leaks in the roof, sealing windows with cow dung and straw. The air smells like burning wood, drying onions, and underlying dread. The kind of smell that settles in your clothes and won't leave till spring if you're lucky enough to see spring. In theory, autumn is supposed to be a time of relief. Harvest is done. You did your job, but you also know better. This is the beginning of the real test. In a few short weeks, the weak and unlucky start to disappear. It's not dramatic, no one screams, they just get quieter, slower, paler. You watch someone get a little too thin, and then they're gone. You pass their shuttered house every morning and you know what happened, but you don't talk about it. Not in the open. You drag a bundle of turnips toward your root cellar, feet sinking into the half-frozen mud. You can feel a cold drizzle settling into your scalp. It's the kind of rain that never makes it into songs or poems, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes your teeth hurt. Inside the cellar, it's dark and damp and smells like old earth and mildew. You place the turnips in neat piles next to the onions, carrots, and one very sad cabbage that already looks like it's losing the will to live. You've got maybe 3 bags of dried peas, a few wheels of sour goat cheese, dried herbs you don't even like, but they were easy to gather. You run your hand along the shelf edge, doing mental math you're not good at, and the numbers don't look promising. Outside, a child coughs, a sharp, wet hack that echoes too long. You pause, listen. Then go back to sealing the cellar door with a few well-placed stones. You've got more firewood to bring in before dark, and oil for the lamp. You might be out. Again, here's the real kicker. Winter hasn't even started yet. These are the good days. You're still upright. You're still hauling. You're still able to feel your fingers. Once the snows come, everything becomes slower, harder, heavier. Nothing dries, everything moulds. And every step outside your house could mean a fall, a broken limb, and a slow, quiet death that the rest of the village doesn't have time to mourn. People around you whisper old warnings, superstitions your grandmother swore by. Hang garlic near the door, scatter iron nails in the corners of the pantry, leave a crust of bread out for wandering spirits. You don't believe most of it, but you still do it, because why not? Logic's a luxury, and besides, if doing something weird with garlic makes your cousin sleep a little easier, you're not going to argue. You need your cousin to help chop wood. Speaking of which, you haven't seen him since yesterday, but that's probably fine, probably. The strange part? The fringe stuff. Every year someone says they saw something in the woods, figures that move through the trees too tall and too quick to be animals. No one says elves out loud, but the implication hangs there. Especially after dark, you half suspect it's just hunger and fear warping people's eyes. Or maybe it's something older. Something you don't name. Either way, you keep your doors shut tight and your fire burning high. There's a common debate in the village, passed down like sourdough starter from one cynical elder to the next. Does it help more to hoard your food in the beginning, or eat well early and face starvation later with a full belly and a strong body? Some swear by fasting early. Others say eating heartily while you still can is the only way to survive the plunge into deep winter. There's no right answer. You've seen people try both, and you've seen them both buried before March. That night, as you lie curled up under stiff wool blankets that smell vaguely of mildew and sheep, you stare at the wooden rafters above your head and listen to the wind push against the shutters. Your candle is nearly out. The flame gutters low, throwing odd shapes across the walls. Your stomach growls, but you're already rationing. You think about your cousin again. You think about the turnips. You try not to think about last year, and in the silence, in that half-dreaming state before sleep truly grabs you, you hear something out in the dark. A crunch, a shift, maybe just a fox, or maybe you close your eyes. You'll deal with it in the morning, if the morning comes. Morning light filters through the wooden slats of your shuttered window, not so much glowing as grudgingly leaking in. You wake with your face half buried in wool, jaw sore from clenching through the cold. Your breath puffs visibly in front of your face, and your first thought isn't good morning. It's still here, not a celebration, more like a quiet acknowledgement that your body, stubborn thing that it is, made it through another night. There's no rooster crowing today. Hasn't been since midsummer when the fox got it. You get up anyway, because time doesn't care if the sun's being lazy. Outside, the frost paints everything white, delicate, and cruel. The ground crunches like brittle sugar underfoot, and you wonder how deep the freeze goes. Your boots are still damp from yesterday. You push your feet into them with a low hiss and start your daily trudge toward the barn. This morning is dedicated to two main tasks, stocking and slaughtering. And yes, those two words sound like the sort of start of a horror story. That's because they are. You step into the barn, and the animals regard you with wary eyes. You have to make a decision today. Which ones eat through the winter, and which ones don't? It's brutal math. How much hay do you have? How many mouths can that realistically feed? There's no ideal answer, just a list of sacrifices. You run your hand along the rough spine of a goat, and glance at the pile of feed. She looks at you like she knows. She probably doesn't, but maybe she does. The pigs are louder, always rooting around like they're trying to escape through the floor. You'll kill 2 pigs today, one for salting, one for sausage and broth. You try not to get attached to the animals, but you've fed them since spring. Some of them even have names. That's a mistake. But a common one. Slaughtering day is the opposite of peaceful. It's blood and steam and shouting. The younger kids are sent to the far end of the village with a handful of stale bread and instructions to stay gone. You, however, are knee-deep in it, literally. The ground is slick, the air is metallic, and your hands ache from the cold even as they're stained warm red. Every part of the pig is used. The blood is caught for pudding. The organs are pulled for sausage. The bones are cracked for marrow. Even the bristles are saved, used for brushes and scrubbing tools. Waste not, die sooner. Back in the kitchen, the cauldron is already bubbling with scraps, onion peelings, and whatever herbs survived the first frost. The smell is intense. Not bad, just overwhelming. Thick. It clings to your hair and seeps into the rafters. Outside, someone's already begun the process of salting the meat, rubbing it down and pressing it into barrels. It has to last. If any of it turns or goes rancid before January, it could mean the difference between barely surviving and not. Your hands are raw by midday, and your stomach is twisted from the mixture of hunger and the sights of the morning. Still, there's pride in it, weirdly. A job done, meat hung, shelves restocked. Even if you hate the process, you've done what you had to. You tell yourself that a lot in the winter, over and over, like a prayer. The strange part about all this, if you step back far enough to think about it, is that people knew exactly how to do this for generations. There's a grim rhythm to it, like a song you've heard too many times but still hum under your breath. Everyone knows their part, everyone knows when to work, when to pray, and when to just keep their mouth shut. You might not know how to read, but you know how to preserve a liver in a clay jar, and in this world that's way more useful. There's one superstition floating around. Every village has one. Here it's said that if you slip and spill blood during slaughter and it splashes northward, it's a bad omen. Someone in your house won't make it through the winter. No one talks about why north. Maybe because the cold always comes from that direction. Maybe because it's where the wolves come from. Or worse. This morning your brother swore he saw the blood arc just slightly toward the northeast. He won't say it out loud, but you saw the fear flicker in his eyes. And you felt it too. An old man in your village, he's got a twisted back and a nose like a broken broom handle, swears by something called blood charms. Says if you hang a dried chicken heart above the door and whisper its name backwards at moonrise, it keeps spirits from slipping in through the cracks. No one listens to him anymore. except on nights when the wind howls extra loud. Then suddenly chicken hearts are in short supply. Still, there's some debate, always is, about whether it's better to slaughter everything now or wait till deeper into December. Slaughtering early means less food needed for animals, but the meat has to last longer. Wait too long though, and you risk disease or injury wiping out your livestock before you can preserve anything. One year, the village next over waited too long and lost all their goats to a hoof disease. No meat, no milk, just hoof rot and starvation. You think about that while sharpening your knife. By late afternoon, the sun's already limping toward the horizon. Your hands are stiff, your back hurts. You haven't sat down since breakfast. The pile of salted meat is decent, not amazing, but better than last year. And you still have the chickens. For now, someone started singing an old winter song outside. Off-key, but earnest. It's about a snow spirit that steals warmth from sleeping bodies. The lyrics are nonsense, but the tune is haunting. You hum along, almost without realizing it, while packing away the last of the sausage. The pantry smells like smoke, spice and blood. That's what survival smells like here. Later, around the hearth, you and your brother take turns poking the fire and making grim jokes about which pig was tastier. Your mother stitches quietly in the corner. No one mentions the blood splash. No one says anything about omens or spirits or cousins who didn't come back from the woods last week. There's no point. You all know. Saying it out loud doesn't change the cold. As night falls, you check the door. Twice. Bolt it, then drape an old wool blanket across it to stop the drafts. You sip something hot and bitter from a chipped cup and feel it burn all the way down. It helps, a little. Tomorrow will be colder. You can feel it in your teeth. You wake to the sound of wind, whining through the gaps in the shutters like it's trying to find a way inside you. You'd think you'd be used to it by now, this hungry, hollow moaning, but it still manages to sound like something dying. Your first thought is the same as yesterday. You're still here, but there's no comfort in it today. It just means you have to get through another one. You pull on your thickest tunic, still damp at the seams, and try not to think about how thin it's gotten from years of wear. The wool itches against your skin, but it's better than freezing. The fire in the hearth is down to faint red coals, and you rush to add wood before the last heat gives up. There's not much left in the stack beside the fireplace, just a few twisted branches and some splinters. You'll need more before dusk. Again, always again, your stomach growls, but breakfast is mostly an illusion these days. You chew on a hard piece of rye bread that tastes like smoke and regret. Then you open the cellar and stare into the larder, your breath fogging the air like a ghost. You inventory everything by candlelight, and none of it looks better than it did yesterday. Let's see. You've got maybe half a sack of barley, 2 onions going soft, a smudge of honey crystallizing in the bottom of a jar, and a few jars of pickled cabbage that no one really likes. The salted pork is holding out okay. But if mould gets into one more barrel, it's going to be a long winter of chewing old leather and pretending it's stew. You pick up a jar and sniff. Still good. Not amazing, but edible. That's the standard now. Edible. Not tasty, not satisfying. Just something that won't kill you faster. The idea that your pantry might not be enough, it scratches at the back of your mind like a rat in the walls. And that metaphor isn't comforting either. Because yes, there are actual rats in the walls. You've trapped 3 in the last week. The cat's doing its best, but even it looks worried. And thinner than usual. The worst part is that you thought you had done everything right. You grew turnips, you dried herbs, you salted, smoked and stored everything by the book. Well, not that you have books, by tradition then. You even helped dig the root cellar deeper this summer. But now, staring at the shelves, all you see is a slow, measured countdown. Every meal you eat is a number ticking down on a clock no one can see. You step outside with a bucket in hand and head for the well, slipping once on the icy path and catching yourself on a fence post that feels like it might snap in half. The frost has gotten into the wood. The bucket cracks slightly as it hits the side of the well, and your breath clouds around you as you haul up the rope, icy water sloshing over your knuckles. You've learned to work fast in the cold. If your hands stay wet too long, you'll feel them start to stiffen, then go numb, and that's when the real damage happens. Later in the morning, you join a few others from the village to haul more firewood from the communal pile. Technically, you all took turns chopping it back in August, sweating under a brutal sun and swearing you'd be grateful for it in December. You were right, sort of. Now it's just a race to get there before your neighbour does. Some families take more than their share. Others go without and hope nobody notices. Nobody says anything, not aloud, but you notice. On the way back, you pass old Marta's house. Her shutters are closed tight, smoke trickling thinly from her chimney. She hasn't come outside in days. Her son died last year, and she's been fading ever since. Someone should check on her. You think about knocking, you think about what you'd say, but you don't. You just keep walking, and the wind covers your footsteps like you were never there. There's this persistent fringe belief floating around your region, probably brought in by travellers or an overly dramatic monk, that the food itself becomes tired if it's stored too long, that it loses its life, its warmth, its soul. Some say if you eat too much of this dead food, it makes you more likely to die too. It's nonsense, you think, probably, but every now and then when you chew a dried pea that tastes like dust, it crosses your mind. The other debate brewing lately is about who actually has extra stores. The steward's granary is locked up tight, but everyone knows it's full. Rumours say the manor's stockpile could feed the entire village for weeks, maybe months, but you won't see a scrap of it unless the steward decides you're worth keeping alive, which, let's be honest, you probably aren't. Some will argue that the villagers should just storm the place if things get bad enough. Others warn that the punishment for theft from the manor is worse than hunger, but that line gets thinner every week. By afternoon, the sky darkens early again, and a fresh curtain of snow starts to fall. The flakes are light and dry, dancing in the wind, but they mean something heavier is on the way. You gather water, tend the hearth, sort the beans, check the rat traps. The day passes in a slow grind of chores and cold. That night, dinner is thin barley porridge with dried herbs and 3 slices of pickled turnip. You chew slowly, trying to trick your stomach into thinking it's a feast. Your mother offers a story while you eat. Something about a girl who outwitted a snow witch using a piece of string and a hollow log. You've heard it before, but no one interrupts. Stories are one of the only things that feel warm anymore. As you curl up in your bed, if you can call a pile of straw and wool a bed, you think about the numbers again, how much food you've got, how many days you think you can stretch it, what happens if the thaw comes late, what happens if it doesn't come at all, and then your thoughts drift to Marta. You tell yourself again that you'll check on her tomorrow, if you have time, if she's still alive. You spend the next morning pretending it's not as bad as it is. That's half the game now, convincing yourself things are manageable when they're clearly spiralling. You throw open the shutters and immediately regret it. Snow piled against the wall overnight, crusted into a jagged, glittering drift. The light stabs your eyes, too bright against the whiteness. The world is silent in that eerie way it gets after a big storm, like sound itself froze mid-air. You haul yourself out, boots crunching down through the snow until you hit hard-packed ground beneath. The air bites, sharper than yesterday. Your breath trails behind you like smoke, and every exposed inch of skin goes raw in minutes. You shove your scarf higher and make your way toward Marta's hut, heart heavy with the guilt of yesterday's inaction. The snow makes everything feel more distant than it is, every step harder, slower, like the village has stretched under the weight of winter. Her door is ice shut, not a good sign. You tap once, twice, then press your ear to the wood. No sounds inside. You call her name, quietly at first, then louder. Still nothing. Finally, you brace your shoulder and shove. The latch gives with a crack and you stagger inside. The first thing that hits you is the cold. It's colder inside than out. No fire, no smell of smoke. And then you see her, curled on a straw mat, her breath shallow, face grey, and she's alive, but barely. Her fingers are like claws curled against her chest. You rush to her, checking for a warmth, but she's stiff, even as her chest rises faintly. You don't know what to do. She's not family, but she's yours in the way everyone in the village is yours. No one else is coming, so you do what you can. You get a fire going, badly, but it catches. You find the last heel of bread on her table, dipped in a crusted bowl of something unidentifiable. You break it up into a bit of broth you brought in a flask and press it to her lips. She doesn't respond at first, but eventually she swallows, slowly, mechanically. You sit with her for over an hour, feeding her a few spoonfuls, rubbing warmth into her hands, praying under your breath without even realizing it. When you finally step outside again, the wind has picked up. The sky has gone from clean blue to steel grey in a matter of minutes, and you realize this isn't over. There's another snowstorm coming. You hurry home, dragging a small bundle of firewood Marta had tucked away. You hate yourself for it, but you need it. She wouldn't want it to go to waste. That's the line you feed yourself anyway. Back home, the hearth is low again. You feed it the stolen wood. The irony doesn't escape you. Saving someone's life and stealing from them in the same hour. You don't feel like a hero. You You feel like someone treading water while everyone else is already underwater. The walls of your home creak under the wind's pressure. You press mud and straw into the gaps again, this time with freezing fingers. It barely holds. You hang extra rags over the window frames and stuff old linens under the door. Your home, like most in the village, was built fast, with whatever materials were nearby. Stones, mud, leftover timber. It wasn't meant for this kind of weather. But then again, nothing really is. A few years back, a merchant passed through and described homes in the south, stone villas with thick walls and tiled roofs that kept out both heat and cold. You thought he was lying. You still kind of do. Nothing keeps out the cold. Not really. The real kicker, though, most people assume you're just hibernating through the season. Resting. Sleeping long nights and relaxing while nature does its thing. But in truth, winter is constant motion. Chopping, hauling, cooking, fixing, patching. You never stop. You can't stop. If you do, the cold creeps in, and it doesn't leave. Tonight, you try to sew a hole in your only good tunic. The needle snaps in your fingers. You curse softly. The fire hisses as a log shifts. You've got enough food for maybe 5 days, assuming nothing goes bad and no one else needs feeding. Your mother wants to make a cake for Yuletide. A cake, she says with a dreamy look, as if flour and eggs are just lying around waiting to be whisked. You nod and smile. Let her have that fantasy. Maybe you'll find a handful of nuts or berries left over. Maybe not. Outside, you hear footsteps. Not close, just the kind of far-off crunching that makes your whole body tense. Who walks in a snowstorm? Bandits don't come this deep into the countryside usually. But hunger makes everyone bold. Or stupid. You peer through the window's warped glass. Nothing. Just the wind howling like it wants in. You tell yourself it's probably a neighbour heading to the chapel for warmth. Or checking on someone else. You tell yourself a lot of things. There's an old story your grandfather told once, about a spirit that walks the roads during storms, looking for warm homes to steal into. It doesn't knock, it doesn't speak, it just slips through cracks and sucks the heat out. You remember him saying you should never look at it, even if you hear it breathing. Especially then. You laughed at the time. Now you check the door a third time, just in case. People are starting to go quiet. It's noticeable, more than just the usual winter hush. Fewer voices in the lanes. Fewer chimneys smoking, fewer footsteps on the well-worn paths. You know what that means. You're not dumb, just hasn't hit your door yet. Here's the fringe detail that keeps you up some nights. There's a theory among a few of the travelling monks that winter itself has a sort of sentience. Not just cold air and snow, but something that wants, that feeds. You scoffed when you first heard it. But now, sometimes, in the early hours when even the fire seems afraid to crackle, you wonder. Not seriously, not really. But you wonder. At night, as you lie beneath 2 wool blankets and a tattered fur, the wind rattles something loose on the roof. You'll need to climb up and fix it tomorrow. If the wind doesn't tear it off completely tonight. You can feel the draft already. You breathe slow, steady. The day is done, but the fear isn't. And neither is the winter. You wake to a white world. Not just snow-covered, but utterly blank. Sky, ground, trees, all fused into a flat, blinding sameness that makes it hard to tell where anything begins or ends. The first snowfall of the season was gentle. This one isn't. The house moans under the weight of snow on the roof. Outside, everything is still. Smothered in silence, so thick you feel like you're inside a snow globe someone forgot to shake. There's a strange kind of awe in it. For a second you just stare through the warped pane of glass, mouth slightly open. The snow looks almost too perfect, untouched and dazzling. But then your eyes land on the woodpile, or what used to be the woodpile. Now it's a lumpy mound somewhere beneath 2 feet of fresh snow. You feel the awe curdle into dread. You shove your feet into boots that are still damp from yesterday. They freeze to your toes instantly. You wrap your hands in wool scraps and step outside, snow nearly up to your knees, every step a laboured shuffle. It takes half an hour to dig out enough wood for the day, and by the end your hands are shaking, your face stings, and your breath scrapes in and out like dry cloth over bark. The moment you're back inside, you strip off the layers and hang them near the fire, even though you know they'll never fully dry. Nothing dries anymore. Your brother is coughing again. He's tried to hide it, but you've noticed. It started as a tickle, but this morning you hear something worse. A wet, crackling rattle that's hard to ignore. He waves it off, insists he's fine, but you've seen this before. That sound means the lungs are filling. If he starts wheezing, he won't stop. You remember your aunt last winter? Same cough, same confidence. She stopped waking up sometime in February. The village healer might have something, mullein leaves maybe, but you're not sure she's got any left, and she lives on the far side of the ridge, across a path now buried under snow. You tell yourself you'll ask around. You tell yourself you'll check tomorrow. That's what everyone says. Tomorrow becomes a kind of prayer, a promise no one's obligated to keep. You spend the afternoon trying to thaw out the chimney. It's icing over from the top down, and the smoke has started curling back into the room, clinging to everything, your hair, your bedding, your lungs, or... Your eyes burn constantly now. There's no such thing as clean air indoors. You get used to coughing, just not that kind of coughing. Your mother spends most of her time near the hearth, gently turning whatever food is on for the day. Sometimes nothing's cooking at all, but she stirs the pot anyway, just to keep her hands busy. Today it's a thin gruel of barley water with onion peel, and the last of the marrow scraped from a pig's bone. She adds wild garlic for taste, which doesn't help. Your brother eats slowly, his spoon clinking against the side of the bowl like a distant drumbeat. You chew ice crystals from your beard and try not to stare. The early darkness is starting to feel normal now. You forget what it's like to see colour in the sky. Every day slides into night like ink spilled across parchment. You light your one good tallow candle, already half melted, and try to read the marks on the doorframe where you and your siblings carved little lines to track growth over the years. You're not sure why you're drawn to them tonight, but something about them feels grounding. Proof that time passes, that life happened here once. There's a certain kind of fringe story whispered by the oldest villagers, the ones who only come out on feast days and funeral processions. They say that the first snowfall isn't just the start of winter, it's a visitation. The snow carries voices, old ones, not ghosts exactly, but echoes of those who didn't make it through past winters. The idea is that the snow remembers. It calls out in the voices of the lost. Sometimes it sings. You used to laugh at that, you don't anymore. Especially not tonight, when the wind picks up and you swear you hear something more than just wind. A phrase, a melody, a name. You tell yourself it's nothing, but you tighten the blankets around your shoulders and glance at the door again. There's a debate you remember from last year. Whether it's better to live farther from your neighbours or closer. Distance means privacy, less risk of sickness to spreading. But being close means someone might notice when you don't open your door for 3 days. You live in that weird in-between, near enough to hear your neighbours' chickens when they still had them, far enough that you wouldn't hear them screaming, if they ever screamed. Someone knocks on the door just after dusk. 3 soft taps. You freeze. No one knocks unless something's wrong. Your mother tenses. Your brother holds his breath. You open the door slowly. It's a girl, maybe 10 years old, red-eyed and trembling. You recognise her. She belongs to the Miller's family, or did. She's wrapped in a too-thin shawl and holding a cracked bowl like she's forgotten what it's for. Her voice is barely audible over the wind. "Do you have broth?" she asks. Not food, not bread, just broth. You let her in without a word, hand her the pot and don't ask any questions. She doesn't say what happened to her parents. You don't ask. After she's eaten, she curls up by the hearth and falls asleep instantly. You and your family sit in silence, listening to the logs crackle, pretending not to notice her breathing and time with your brothers. You'll figure out what to do with her tomorrow. Outside, the wind is still howling and the snow has started again. You stand at the window, watching it fall. Big, slow flakes this time, drifting down like ash. They land on the glass and melt into nothing. And just for a moment, you think you hear someone call your name. You lose track of time. The days blur into each other, stitched together by the rising and falling of the fire, the endless chores, and the monotony of rationed meals. Darkness falls so early now that the sun feels like a brief visitor, never fully settling before it slips away again. You begin measuring time by candles burned and how many layers you wear to bed. Right now, you're at 2 candles a day and 4 layers at night, which means it's mid-December, probably. The night stretches longer every week. You wake up in darkness, eat in darkness, and often go to sleep in it too. You've taken to lighting the tallow candle during meals, even though it's wasteful just to see the faces around you. Not that they're always worth looking at. Your brother is pale and gaunt, and his cough has worsened. The girl hasn't spoken in 2 days, not a word, just watches the fire, curled tight with her hands tucked into her sleeves. You try talking to her, offering her the last of a dried apple slice. She takes it without a smile, chewing slowly, eyes unfocused. Your mother says she's just tired. But you recognise the look. It's the kind of quiet that creeps in before someone slips away. The candlelight doesn't reach far, but it does flicker across the rough walls, casting long, twitchy shadows. They dance when you're not looking directly at them. At first, you thought it was just the flame, but sometimes you swear the shadows move even when the candle's still. You don't mention this to anyone. Not because you're afraid of being mocked, but because saying it out loud might make it real. Fire becomes your entire world. The hearth is both the heart of the home and the final line of defence. If it goes out, you don't just lose warmth, you lose the will to keep going. Every morning, the first thing you do is check the embers. If they are still glowing, it feels like a tiny victory. If they're not, it's panic. You've only lost the fire once this winter, and it took you hours to reignite it, shivering and praying and blowing your lungs raw into damp kindling. The cost of keeping it burning is constant labour. You need wood, and wood means going outside. Today the storm has passed, but the cold is worse, bitter, windless and sharp. You force yourself out early, the sky still a dull grey smear above the trees. The world is frozen solid, tree limbs heavy with ice. The snow hard and unyielding. Every step creaks like old bones. You haul what wood you can, fingers going numb inside your mitts. You don't speak. You barely breathe. Your body just moves, like it's operating without you. Later, after the wood's stacked and the fire is roaring again, you let yourself collapse by the hearth. The warmth is shallow, but better than nothing. Your mother's sewing again, darning socks with thread she's unravelled from an old tunic. Your brother lies on the floor with a wet cloth on his forehead. The girl dozes against the wall. No one speaks. Your thoughts drift to your neighbours, the ones you haven't seen since the last snow. You think of Thomas, the blacksmith, and his 3 sons. You used to hear the ring of his hammer echoing through the valley. You realise you haven't heard it in over a week. Then there's Goethe, who always sang while hanging laundry. No singing lately, no laundry either. Just stillness. And then there's the Miller's family. The girl still hasn't said what happened to them, but you haven't seen smoke from their chimney either. You think about walking over there just to check, but you also think about how deep the snow is, and how much energy that would take, and how much food you'd have to burn to make up for it. You think about it, and then you don't go. Everyone tells stories in winter. It's one of the only things left to do. Not happy stories, though. Those don't feel real anymore. Instead, they're grim little parables, tales of winters past, of strange creatures in the forest, of people who made pacts with the cold itself. Your favourite, if you can call it that, is about a woman who survived by never sleeping. She stayed awake all winter, watching for the frost wraith that visited her village every full moon. When it came for her, she was ready, stabbed it through the heart with a splinter of ice and trapped it in a frozen lake. No one knows if the lake is still there. You hope not. You like the idea that she won, but the fringe tale that truly sticks in your head is the one told by the butcher's boy last year, before he froze walking home from the chapel. He said that if you wake up at exactly midnight and the fire is out, the cold will speak to you. Not loudly, just enough. It'll whisper an offer. Give up, lie down, let it take you, and promise that it won't hurt. It sounds like your mother, he'd said, his eyes wide in the candlelight, like someone you trust. No one laughed. No one does when it's dark outside. The scholarly debate, or as scholarly as things get here, is about sleep. Should you sleep more in winter, like animals do, or less, to stay sharp and aware? Some say sleep is the only escape from hunger. Others believe it dulls your senses and makes death easier to sneak up on. You don't know what to think. All you know is that sleep comes heavy now, like a weight, like a temptation. That night the girl finally speaks. Just one sentence, eyes still locked on the fire. They didn't wake up. No emotion, no tears, just the words laid flat between you and the darkness. You don't ask who they are. You already know. After everyone's drifted off to sleep, you sit alone by the fire, feeding it tiny scraps of wood and listening to the wind outside. The roof creaks, the shadows twitch. Your brother coughs once and goes quiet. You close your eyes. You don't wake up at midnight. But you do dream of your mother's voice, whispering something soft just out of reach. You wake up with your face cold, not just chilly, cold. Nose stiff, lips numb, frost forming at the edges of the blanket you pulled over your head. The fire burned low again, nothing but a sleepy red glow under grey ash. You scramble to it on stiff legs, knocking over a wooden bowl in your haste, scattering dry onion skins across the floor. A few frantic breaths, a handful of twigs, and the hiss of half-frozen kindling later. The fire roars back to life, barely. It takes longer now. Everything does. The air feels heavier. More reluctant to move. No one else is up. Your mother still lies bundled in her corner, her breath barely visible. The girl has drawn so close to the hearth in the night that her shawl is singed on one side. You check your brother. He's warm enough, but pale. His lips are sickly purple at the edges. The coughing's stopped. But that's not always good news. You put a hand to his chest, slow, shallow movement, still breathing. For now. You look at the fire again. This has become your full-time job, keeping the flame alive. It doesn't rest, doesn't give you a break, doesn't care if your hands are shaking or your boots are wet. If you don't feed it, it dies. If it dies, you die. The hearth becomes the centre of your universe, and you orbit it like a satellite tethered by fear and obligation. You've learned to move without thinking, bend, grab, poke, blow, feed. It's a kind of dance. A cruel one, but still a dance, and yet, even after all that work, even with the fire stoked and fed and cracking happily, it's still cold. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and starts to unpack its bags. The kind that whispers, "I'm not leaving for a while." The inside of your house is dark and smoky. The air is thick, heavy with soot and moisture. You open a window briefly to let it clear out, but a blast of ice slaps you in the face and you slam it shut. Better to breathe smoke than let in death. You try to imagine what you smell like. You gave up on washing days ago. The buckets freeze. The water hurts too much. You've been sweating in your clothes, then sleeping in them, then sweating in them again. You stink like animal fat, mildew, old firewood, and desperation. You've never missed summer so badly. Today is for gathering. Again, always. You need kindling, branches, or anything that's dry enough to catch. You trudge out past the shed, where the roof caved in last week, past the place where the chickens used to be, now just a sagging pen covered in snow. You spot your neighbour Jakob's sled leaned against a tree, but no tracks leading away. You try not to think about that. In the forest, the trees are bare, branches clawing the sky like fingers. You know this path well, but snow transforms everything. Familiar shapes become strange. You nearly trip over a fallen log you've stepped over 100 times. You gather what you can, your breath sharp and fast, fingers aching even inside wool. Every time you kneel, the cold seeps up through your knees, chilling you from the ground up. You find something strange. Bones. A small rib cage picked clean. Probably a fox or a cat or maybe something no one will admit to eating. You glance around. No prints. Just wind-carved drifts. You shove the bones aside and keep moving. Pretend you didn't see them. Pretend you didn't wonder, just for a second, how much meat had been on them. Back home, the fire is still going, but barely. You toss in the damp sticks and coax the flame with a breath and a prayer. The girl watches you with wide eyes, like you're some kind of magician. You want to tell her there's no magic here, just repetition and fear. There's a debate people used to have in the fall, before things got bad, whether to keep one big fire or spread the heat through small braziers in each room. Big fire means central warmth, but all eggs in one basket. If the hearth dies, everything dies. Smaller fires are safer, but costlier, riskier, harder to maintain. You chose the big fire. You still think you were right. Probably. Your mother tries to make soup. She adds in dried beans, a handful of cracked oats, and half a sprig of something green that may or may not be edible. The result is thick and grey, but warm. The smell alone is worth something. It fills the house, masking the other smell. You all sit in a circle, hands wrapped around rough clay bowls, Sahin rising to meet tired faces. Your brother coughs again. Not a good sound. You glance at your mother. She avoids your eyes. Later, you try to boil water just to keep warm. The pot rattles on the iron hook, steam drifting up toward the ceiling beams, which are already slick with condensation and mould. Everything inside is damp, even the air, especially the air. There's an old superstition, passed down from someone's great-grandfather, about fire spirits. That if you treat your hearth kindly, clean around it, feed it well, speak to it softly, it will keep you safe. If you neglect it, or insult it, or let the ashes sit too long, it will abandon you. Or worse, you used to mock that idea. Now, sometimes you whisper thank you when the flame flares up after a difficult lighting, just in case. The strangest thing you hear all day is a bird call, sharp, high, sudden. It makes everyone in the house stop. You hadn't realised how long it had been since you heard a living thing sing. You rush to the window, press your face against the cold glass. Nothing. No bird, no sound. Just a wind-whipped branch tapping the sill like fingers drumming a rhythm only it understands. Your neighbour doesn't light their chimney tonight. Again. The fire gets harder to feed as night closes in. The wood is damp. The wind moans through the cracks in the roof. The girl finally speaks again. One word. Colder. She's not wrong. You wrap her tighter in her blankets. Your brother murmurs in his sleep, coughing without waking. Your mother doesn't say anything at all. You sit by the hearth long after everyone else has drifted off. You poke the coals, listen to them. Shift, breathe, glow. You swear you hear something deeper in the flame, not voices exactly, just something moving, watching. You lean closer. The fire hisses. You whisper, "Thank you, so." Thank you. You don't remember the last time you bathed. Not properly, not even with a bucket and rag. Washing in winter feels like a luxury out of someone else's life. A life with warmth and time and fingers that don't sting when they touch water. You've been wearing the same tunic for nearly a month. You turned it inside out 2 weeks ago to pretend it was clean. The grime clings to you now like a second skin, stiff with sweat, smoke, grease. And whatever else the air carries in these walls, the house smells like a stew of everything. Animal fat, wet wool, old broth, smoke so thick it curls your nose hairs. Somewhere in there is the underlying stench of unwashed bodies, yours, your brother's, your mother's, the girl's. It's not that you don't care anymore. You do, or at least you remember that you used to, but even just the thought of stripping down to wash in icy water is enough to make your bones ache. You make a half-hearted attempt anyway. Fill a pot with snow, melt it down and touch it with a cautious finger. So cold it makes your skin recoil like you've been burned. You dip a cloth in it and swipe it over your face, and that's enough. Your cheeks sting like you've been slapped, but there's a strange kind of pride in the discomfort. Like, look at me, I'm still human enough to try. Your mother suggests a cleansing with smoke instead, old tradition, for when the water is too precious or too cruel. She throws dried juniper and sage on the fire, waves the smoke toward you with a bundle of straw. You breathe it in, sharp, herbal, dry. It doesn't clean you exactly, but it makes you feel less like a walking lump of rot. That counts for something. The roof drips slowly now, snow melting under the thin heat of the midday fire. You put a bucket beneath the leak, watching it fill drop by drop. The water isn't clean, bits of soot from the rafters land in it like tiny black feathers, but it's better than nothing. You'll strain it through a cloth and use it for soup, or tea, or maybe just to rinse your hands if you're feeling extravagant. Outside, the world is a mess of old snow, new mud and strange smells. The outhouse door is frozen shut, and when you finally wrench it open, the smell nearly knocks you flat. You try to breathe through your mouth, but even that doesn't save you. You do what you have to do and get out fast. You feel guilty for using extra snow to wash your hands afterward, but not guilty enough to skip it. There are limits. Everyone in the village smells. That's not an insult, it's just a fact. You pass your neighbours and catch the scent of wood smoke, wet fur, old turnips, and something sour you can't place. You wonder what you smell like to them. You try not to linger on the thought. You do catch one sharp, chemical tang as you pass old Marta's home. Smell like pine tar and dried mint. She always said she kept a clean air charm hanging by her chimney. Maybe it works, or maybe you're just desperate for anything different. Somewhere out there a dog has gone feral. You hear it at night, low growls and the occasional bark echoing through the forest. No one's sure whose it was. Probably used to belong to the weaver's boy before he disappeared. Now it skulks between homes, eyes glowing in the dark. Nosing at doors, you've started hanging bones in a tree out back to keep it away, or maybe to keep it fed. Depends on the night. There's a strange fringe practice some families talk about. Burning the old straw bedding once a month and sleeping on the bare floor until they can gather fresh straw. It's supposed to chase away the sickness that builds up in sweat and grime. You tried it once, froze your backside nearly solid, decided to stick with rotating the bedrolls instead. Your family sleeps in a tight little cluster now, sharing heat like animals in a den. You don't even notice the smell of each other anymore, just the silence between breaths. Your brother is starting to smell different though, like metal, like rust. It worries you. You check his back for signs of rot or bed sores, but it's just pale skin stretched too thin. You rub his chest with garlic and lard, an old folk remedy you don't really believe in but have nothing better to try. The girl watches you do it without blinking. One of the strangest debates people in the village used to have, usually after too much mead at harvest, was whether it was more honourable to die clean or survive filthy. Most voted for survival, of course, but a few argued that keeping dignity, even in the face of death, meant something. You remember the blacksmith saying, "There's worse ways to die than with your fingernails clean." He's dead now, died last winter. You helped bury him. His nails were black with soot and blood. Your mother starts sorting through the last of the soap, one lump left, hard as a rock and covered in lint. She considers it for a long time, then tucks it back into the cupboard like a precious relic. Maybe for spring, maybe for a funeral, you don't ask. That night you dream of a bath. Not the real kind, something mythic. A stone tub full of steaming water and floating petals. You're not even sure where that image comes from. A story you once heard? A picture you imagined? You lower yourself into it in the dream and sighing as the heat crawls through your frozen limbs, and for just a moment, you're not afraid, you're not starving. You're not watching your brother fade or wondering if the fire will last till dawn. Then the dream shifts. The petals darken, the water turns thick, and when you look down, your hands are stained black. You wake up shivering under your stiff blankets, your skin prickling as if something just left. You sit up and listen. The fire's low, the wind howls, the girl is murmuring in her sleep, and your brother's breath is thin and sharp. You want to wash. You want to burn your clothes and scrub your skin until it forgets winter ever touched it. But instead, you stoke the fire, add another stick of damp wood, and lie back down. You fall asleep smelling like smoke and old onions, dreaming of water that doesn't exist. Your brother doesn't get out of bed that day. Not even to lean against the wall like he usually does, wrapped in a blanket, pretending to feel better. You watch his chest rise and fall, slow, uneven, the kind of breathing that makes you keep checking, even when you tell yourself not to. His eyes are glassy when they open, and his lips are cracked down the middle, peeling from cold and fever. He tries to smile when he sees you, but it barely lifts one side of his face. You hand him water, thick with melted snow, and a hint of soot, and he drinks it without complaint. Your mother makes a poultice out of dried elderflowers and a smear of honey. She says it'll break the fever, though you suspect she just needs to do something. You let her press it to his chest anyway. The girl helps, silently handing her scraps of linen, wrapping thin fingers around the bowl. She hasn't said much since that night, but she watches everything now, like she's collecting data for a future where she survives and needs to know how. Outside, the air is heavy with moisture. Snow is falling again, this time the thick, lazy kind that floats like feathers. It's the worst kind, deceptively beautiful but clogging everything, burying paths, muffling tinning sound. It accumulates in corners and under eaves until something cracks under the weight. You hear it happen mid-morning, wood splitting in the distance, a clean snap followed by a soft thump. A roof, probably. Maybe a shed, maybe someone's home. You don't check. Instead, you focus on keeping the fire alive. You've gone through nearly all the dry wood. The pile you brought in yesterday is damp again, and each time you open the door, the wind steals a bit more heat. You start feeding the fire other things, twisted straw, old furniture pieces, even a broken loom your mother had kept just in case. She watches as you split it apart and doesn't stop you. The fire flares briefly, grateful. There's a smell you can't ignore now. Under the smoke and stew and woolsome, there's something sharper, something off. You think it's coming from your brother. You lift the blankets and see the sweat beading at his collarbone yellow and sticky. His skin is red in patches, flushed in unnatural patterns. The fever is deep now. You whisper his name, and he blinks slowly at you like he's trying to place your face. You don't ask if he knows who you are. You don't want the answer. In the village there's no doctor. There's Marta, who knows herbs, and the priest, who knows prayers. That's it. And Marta's barely hanging on herself. You saw her yesterday, standing outside her house like she'd forgotten what she came out for, arms wrapped around herself staring at the snow. You offered her a bowl of broth, and she took it, but her eyes were empty. She's not saving anyone right now, least of all your brother. You consider going to the chapel. The priest might have something, holy water, dried herbs, even just company. But your boots are cracked, and the road is gone, buried beneath drifts that shift with the wind. The last time someone tried to walk it, they turned back with frostbitten fingers. You can't afford that. You're the one still tending the fire. If you go down, so does the house. There's an old belief your grandmother used to whisper about, the sickness that comes with the cold, not from it. A shadow that rides the snow, slipping into homes through keyholes and chimney cracks, curling around the sick and whispering to them in dreams. She called it the pale guest, said if you see its handprint on the windowsill, just a bit of frost in the shape of 5 long fingers, it means someone's already marked to go. You check the windows out of habit. Just ice. For now. There's a debate your family used to have every winter when someone inevitably fell ill. Do you pile on blankets and sweat the fever out, or do you let the body cool, try to starve the heat? It's one of those things everyone swears they know the right answer to, and none of them do. You choose blankets this time, maybe out of hope, maybe because it feels more like helping. The girl offers a cracked clay cup filled with steeped bark and a few dried berries. You have no idea if it'll help. Maybe it's poison, maybe it's medicine. You give it to your brother anyway. He drinks it slowly, lips shaking, and then lies back with a sigh. The silence that follows is louder than his cough. Mid-afternoon, you finally step outside to catch your breath. The wind's died down, but the air is too still, like the world is holding something in. The village looks frozen into place. No footprints, no smoke from chimneys. Just rows of houses, half buried and silent. You know there are people inside, you just can't hear them anymore. There's a figure at the far end of the path, standing still in the snow, face shadowed under a hood. You blink, and they're gone. A trick of the light, maybe. Or the edge of something real. You don't move, just stare at the place where they were until the cold makes your joints ache. That night, your brother sleeps, or maybe he just lies very still. You listen to his breathing, count the seconds between inhales. The fire pops, sending sparks into the dark. Your mother's eyes are closed, but she's not asleep. The girl sits with her chin on her knees, watching the fire like it's going to speak. You wonder what it's like to die in the cold, and is it peaceful? People say so. That after the shaking stops, you feel warm again. That it tricks you into thinking you're fine right before it takes you. You hope that's true. You hope your brother never feels the moment it happens. Just before you sleep, you check the window again. Still no handprint. You wake to the sound of howling. Not the wind this time, though that's still rattling the eaves, but something else, lower, wilder. The kind of sound that comes from something with teeth. You sit up fast, heart thudding, your hand already reaching for the dull hatchet you keep near the hearth. It's just instinct now. That edge of paranoia never really leaves you in winter. You shuffle to the window and peek through the crack in the shutters. Outside everything is a pale grey blue, the morning light smothered under heavy clouds. And then you hear it again, closer this time. Wolves. They have been getting bolder. Last week someone said they saw tracks right up to their chicken coop. Not paw prints, tracks. Footprints, straight line, no stagger, meaning the animal was moving slow, purposeful, unafraid. And now, here they are, circling the village like it's a buffet with poorly latched doors. You scan the tree line, heart still beating in your ears. Nothing visible yet, but you feel it, like breath on your neck. The wolves always come closer in the dead of winter. Hunger pulls them from the deep woods, from their dens, from the places where they'd rather be left alone. But starvation makes everything bolder. You should know, you've seen it in your own reflection, that same look of something feral trying to pretend it's still civilized. You step outside with the axe just long enough to check the coop. No chickens anymore, of course. They were eaten or butchered weeks ago, but the bones you left tied in a sack are gone, not chewed, gone. You check the snow for prints, but the storm has wiped the slate clean. Still you know they were here. Inside, the fire is low again, always low. Your brother's not moving much. He hasn't spoken in 2 days. He drinks when you bring him water, but that's it. You touch his forehead, burning. You whisper his name, nothing. You whisper it louder, still nothing. You don't know if he's sleeping or slipping. The difference gets harder to tell. You sit beside him for a while, watching his face. You remember what he looked like in summer. Sweaty, sunburned, grinning with juice from stolen berries smeared across his chin. You try to hold on to that version, but it's hard. He looks like someone else now, hollow-cheeked, bones pressing against skin. You don't cry, you don't have the water to spare. The girl is near the hearth, feeding the fire without being asked. She's quiet, deliberate, almost graceful in the way she moves, like she's always done this, or like she's seen what happens when it goes out. She glances up and meets your eyes, and for a moment you feel like she's older than you, like she already knows how this ends. That morning the village bell doesn't ring. The priest used to toll it every morning, just once, a soft metal chime to say, "We're still here," but now silence. Maybe the bell rope froze, maybe the priest did. You don't go to check, no one does. There's a debate people like to have when there's still energy to talk. Is it worse to starve or freeze? Most say freeze, it's quick after all. Painful but fast. Starvation is slow, gnawing, humiliating. But others argue that hunger at least gives you time to find food, to bargain, to hope. The cold doesn't wait. You've gone back and forth on it yourself. Now, watching your brother fade, you're not sure there's a right answer. They're just two different shapes of death. You start hearing things. It's subtle at first, a whisper in the walls, a creak that sounds like your name. You blame the wind, the smoke, the exhaustion. But when you mention it to your mother, she just nods like she's heard it too. She doesn't ask what it said. She just wraps another shawl around her shoulders and goes back to sewing. There's a fringe belief in the region, one of those stories you're not supposed to take seriously, that wolves aren't always wolves in winter. That sometimes, when the hunger gets bad enough, a person goes out into the woods and never really comes back. Not as they were. They return on 4 legs, with yellow eyes and too much knowing in their gaze. The winter changes people, the saying goes, sometimes into wolves, sometimes into nothing. You don't believe it, except when you do. Like now, when you catch sight of movement in the tree line just after dusk. Too tall for an animal, but not quite right for a person. It stands there for a second, half shadowed in the trees, and then it's gone. You shut the shutters tighter and push a chair under the latch and your mother lights the candle early. The wax is running low, but she says, let it burn. Like tonight deserves light, even if it costs you tomorrow's. The flame throws long shadows across the room, and you try not to watch them too closely. They stretch and twitch in ways that don't always match your movements. Sometimes they move before you do. Your brother moans in his sleep, a low, breathy sound that barely registers as human. You rush to his side, his eyes are open but unfocused. He tries to speak, but his voice cracks. All he manages is a single word. Cold. You hold his hand. It's colder than the air around you. You don't know what to say. Later, as everyone sleeps, or tries to, you sit by the door with the axe in your lap, listening. The wind has dropped off again, but something crunches in the snow now and then. Too deliberate for drifting ice, too real to be imagination. You wait for a howl, but none comes, just silence. Deep, dull, pressing sentence that wraps around the house like a hand. You tell yourself the wolves won't come tonight. Not this close, not yet, but you keep the axe on your lap anyway, and when the fire dips low, you whisper a quiet thank you to it, just in case the hearth spirit is listening. January begins like a bad joke. You wake on the first day to find the salted meat has started to go. Not all of it, just the edges, but it's enough. Enough to know the barrel wasn't sealed properly. Enough to know that whatever miracle you were hoping for, it's not coming. You cut off the spoiled bits, scrape away the green fuzz and slimy patches, and try not to breathe through your nose. Your hands shake with cold and anger, and something else that tastes like fear. You drop a few pieces into the pot anyway, hoping the boil will kill whatever's growing. Probably won't, but you don't have many choices left. The smell fills the house. Your mother pretends not to notice, stirring the pot like she's making some royal stew. The girl doesn't say anything, just curls closer to the fire, her hands hidden in her sleeves, her eyes dark. Your brother coughs in his sleep, then again and then again. The third one sounds wet, thick. You don't like it. You haven't liked any of his sounds for days now. You sit back against the wall and stare at the ceiling. There's a hole up there now, where one of the beams cracked under snow last week. You patched it with burlap and hay, but the wind still whistles through. You've grown used to it. The cold spots in the corners, the breeze that moves through the house like it owns the place. Everything's falling apart in slow motion. The village is quieter than ever. You haven't seen anyone outside in days. No one comes to trade or barter. No one leaves a bundle at your door. Even the chapel bell hasn't rung. A part of you wonders if you're the last house still lit, not the last family, just the last flicker. The idea feels too real, too possible. You stop thinking about it. Your food stores are a disaster. Half the turnips are soft. The beans have weevils. The onions are sprouting. The dried apples are long gone. And the last of the oats were burned 3 nights ago when the girl fell asleep during her stir. She cried when she saw what happened, not loudly, not with drama, just sat down on the floor and let the tears fall while your mother patted her hair and told her it was okay. It wasn't. But what else do you say? You try to be creative. You mash up the barley with the root scraps and throw in dried herbs you don't remember the name of. The result is a paste. It sticks to the roof of your mouth and doesn't taste like anything, which is honestly an improvement over the spoiled meat. You drink snowmelt steeped with pine needles and call it tea. You fry stale bread in lard and call it cake. You chew a leather strap for 5 minutes and almost believe it's jerky. There's a fringe recipe, one of those whispered ideas passed from grandmother to granddaughter, not written down because no one wants to write it down. Bark stew. You strip the inner bark of birch trees, boil it for hours with water and stones, and drink the gritty result. It's supposed to stave off hunger for a while. You make a pot of it and try not to gag. The girl drinks hers quietly. Your mother won't touch it. You tell yourself you're not that desperate. Then you drink a second bowl. Outside, the wolves howl again. Closer now. No guessing this time. You hear the yipping barks echoing off the snowbanks, the long low calls that sound almost like voices. You stay away from the windows. You sit near the door instead, axe in hand. The girl doesn't ask questions. She just watches. You wonder what the wolves eat when the deer are gone, when the rabbits are buried too deep to reach, when even the scavengers are starving. You try not to finish the thought. There's a story the priest used to tell about St. Brannock, who went into the mountains during the Great Famine and survived 6 months on nothing but snow and prayer. You always figured he left out the part where Brannock also ate his donkey. Or himself. Or maybe that's why there's no second part to the story. You'd laugh if your lips weren't so dry. The scholarly question, if you had scholars here, which you don't, is this. When does food stop being food? Is it when it spoils? When it smells? When it no longer gives you strength? Or is it when you look at it and feel nothing but dread? You don't know the answer. You just know you're scraping mould off a slab of pork that's more salt than meat, and you're going to eat it anyway. You dream of spring sometimes, not flowers or sunshine, just green. The colour green, a single leaf fat and clean and alive. Sometimes it hovers in front of you in the dark, just out of reach. You wake with the taste of dirt in your mouth and your stomach curling around itself. The girl speaks again today. She says, "I saw someone in the trees." She doesn't explain. You don't ask. You both already know it might not have been a person, or it might have, which is worse. You go outside with the axe just to check. The snow is high and crusted. The air bites. You scan the trees and the trail and the edge of the clearing. You see prints, not boots, not paws, bare feet. Just 3 or 4 steps, then nothing. You don't tell the others. You chop wood until your fingers go numb and your lungs burn. Then you carry it back and pretend everything's fine. That night, dinner is a thin broth of bark water and 2 shreds of meat. You all sip it like it's precious. You don't talk. You listen to the fire, to your brother's laboured breathing, to the wolves outside. The girl hums quietly to herself. You don't recognise the tune. You check the meat barrel again before bed. Another piece is turned. You throw it out into the snow and watch it vanish into the white like it was never there. You wonder if anyone will find the bones come spring. You eat a tree today. Not the whole thing, obviously, but a piece. The inner bark stripped with a dull knife from a young birch, peeled like the skin off an apple, then boiled for hours until it breaks down into a kind of bitter porridge. It's not good. It's not even passable. It tastes like sour wood and wet paper, and something faintly like medicine, but crueler. Still you eat it. You chew each fibrous mouthful until your jaw aches. Then you swallow and start again. It doesn't fill you, but it keeps the hollowness at bay for another hour. The girl eats hers without comment. She's stopped reacting to food entirely, just opens her mouth and accepts whatever's given. Your mother says, it's not so bad, but she doesn't finish her bowl. She claims her stomach is upset. She's been saying that a lot lately. Your brother can't eat any more. He tried this morning and vomited it back up before you even finished spooning it in. The sickness has turned in him. There's a sour smell around his cot now, one that won't leave even with the windows cracked. You try changing his linens, but all the spare cloths are stiff with old stains. You boil what you can in the big pot over the fire, stirring them with a stick like meat. Even clean, they never really lose the scent. You go out to the woods twice a day, once in the morning for bark, once in the afternoon for pine needles and anything else you can scrape off the frozen earth. You find a few mushrooms under a rotting log, their caps slick and grey. You know enough to leave them. Anything growing this time of year is probably more poison than food. Still, you hold one for a long moment, turning it in your hands. You imagine eating it, ending the slow fade with something final. Then you drop it in the snow and move on. You scrape lichen from rocks, you gather moss. You even try chewing acorns, but they're bitter, and leave your tongue dry and your throat sore. There's a trick to making them edible: soaking, boiling, drying, but who has the time? You can't spend 3 days prepping a handful of bitter nuts while your brother wastes away in the corner. There's an old folk belief about this part of winter, the depths of January, that the forest tests you. Not just physically, but spiritually. It offers you things: twigs shaped like bread, puddles that look like stew, berries that shine like jewels, and it watches what you do. If you give in, if you eat what's false, you'll be lost by spring. Not dead necessarily, just not you anymore. You remember laughing at that as a child, thinking of trees with evil intent branches whispering choices into people's ears. But now, in the biting stillness of the forest, you understand. Hunger rewires your thinking, makes you want things you shouldn't. You find yourself fantasizing about meals you never even liked. Roasted parsnips, burnt porridge, dried fish. You'd give your boots for a stale crust of bread. You do give your boots in a way. The left one tears open at the sole as you walk back from the woods, and by the time you get home, your sock is soaked and your toes are stinging. You pull it off near the hearth and your mother sucks in a breath when she sees the pale, waxy skin. "We need to warm it," she says, and wraps it in wool while you grit your teeth. The pain comes fast and sharp as the feeling returns. You've heard stories of people losing toes this way. You stare at yours, counting them like they might disappear if you blink. The girl watches, wide-eyed. You manage a tight smile and tell her you're fine. She doesn't smile back. There's a scholarly debate, again not that there are scholars nearby, about the best famine foods in medieval climates. Birch bark, nettles, acorn flour, preserved seaweed, but none of them are real solutions. They are bridges, not roads. Ways to limp towards spring, assuming spring comes before you fall down. Back home, you find the last bit of animal fat you were saving for soap. You mix it into the bark porridge, trying to coax out some kind of richness. It helps, a little, enough that the girl asks for seconds, and your mother doesn't pretend she's not hungry this time. Your brother hasn't opened his eyes all day. You sit beside him at dusk, hold his hand and hum an old tune. A lullaby your mother used to sing about stars and sheep and meadows, things you can't even picture clearly anymore. He doesn't respond. You don't know if he hears you. His hand is cold, but he's still breathing, shallow and slow. Outside, the wind picks up. The wolves are quiet tonight, but you hear something else, a heavy shuffle in the snow, not fast, not stealthy, just dragging. You don't look out the window. You don't want to see what made the sound, if anything did. You move closer to the fire and tell yourself it's nothing. Your mother sleeps fitfully. You hear her muttering in her dreams, something about green fields and warm ovens. You let her sleep. The girl refuses to lie down. She sits by the hearth, curled like a cat, eyes open, watching the flames like she's trying to learn something they're not saying. That night you can't sleep, not for long. You wake up cold despite the fire. Heart racing for no reason you can explain, you rise quietly, step over your family's in sleeping forms, and open the door just a crack. The snow glows under the moon, crisp and silent. There are no tracks, no movement. But in the stillness you swear you hear chewing. Not close, not far, just chewing. You close the door and slide the bolt. Then you add another log to the fire, even though it means tomorrow's wood will run out early. You sit beside the girl and stare at the flames with her. In the morning you'll scrape more bark. You'll try the acorns again, you'll lie to your mother about how much food is left. But tonight you just listen to the fire crackle, trying not to think about what else might be chewing its way through the woods. Death doesn't knock. That's the cruel thing. It doesn't announce itself with ceremony or bells. It arrives quietly in the middle of the night, in a breath that never comes back, in the stillness of a body that doesn't shift toward the warmth anymore. You find your brother at dawn, cold as the window glass, his chest unmoving, his mouth slightly open like he had one more word to say but never found the breath. You stare at him for a long time. Part of you expects him to blink, to cough, to jolt back into life with a gasp and a groan and another request for water. But he doesn't. His lips are blue, his skin has gone slack. You touch his cheek and it's not soft. It's not warm, it's not him. Your mother wakes slowly. She sees you sitting beside the cot and doesn't even need to ask. Her shoulders sag like someone just unstrung them, and she walks past without a word, taking the kettle off the fire and pouring it into a cracked mug. Her hands shake slightly. She doesn't cry, you don't either. You feel like you should, but nothing comes. The girl says nothing at all. She looks once, registers it, then looks away. You wonder how many bodies she's seen by now. She turns her face to the fire and closes her eyes. You can tell she's not sleeping. There's no ritual for this, not in winter. No drawn-out prayers, no burial procession. The ground is too hard to dig. The priest isn't coming. You can't even wrap him properly. There's not enough clean cloth, so you do what everyone else does, you wait. You pull the cot into the coldest part of the house and cover the body with every old blanket you can spare. You light a small candle and place it on the table near his feet, and you try to ignore the fact that the wax costs more than the food you ate yesterday. The smell will come eventually. It always does. Not right away. Winter slows that down. But it will. You think you'll get maybe a week before you have to make a choice. And the strange part? Life keeps going. You still have to fetch wood. You still have to tend the fire, boil water, cook that awful bark mush and pretend it's something your brother would have complained about. His body is barely 10 feet away, and you still have to pull yourself together and live. Your mother starts humming after lunch, a song she used to sing in spring during planting. You want to tell her to stop, that it feels wrong, but you don't. You let her have it. Maybe she's trying to keep herself from unravelling, or maybe she already has. The girl begins carving something into the wall near the hearth. Small symbols drawn with the charred end of a stick, not letters, just marks. One for her family, she tells you. One for each person. A row of lines. 5 in total, now 4. She adds a line for your brother. You don't stop her. There's a debate people used to have, back when the snow hadn't yet stolen the colour from the world. What's better? A slow death, where you can say goodbye, or a quick one, where you never see it coming? You don't know the answer. All you know is that you watched your brother fade, and still it feels like he disappeared when you weren't looking. In the village, people used to hold vigil. They'd sit with the body all night, taking turns, whispering stories, keeping candles lit to guide the soul. You wonder who's doing that now. You wonder how many are left to keep watch. A fringe belief from the old days says that if a body stays unburied too long, it invites things. Not spirits, not demons, just things. Cold shadows that move in the corners of houses. They don't harm the living, but they linger. They grow, they remember. You shove another log on the fire and hope that's enough. Later you walk to the edge of the woods. You don't go in, just stand there staring at the trees. You think about digging, but the soil's stone and the snow too deep. It'd take hours just to break through the crust. And what would you use? Your hands? A cooking pot? Sir? You come back empty-handed. The wind is sharp and bitter, like it's punishing you for even thinking of trying. That night, your mother kisses your brother's forehead. Just once. Then she climbs into her bed without saying anything else. The girl does the same. You sit by the fire staring at the candle near his feet as the wax melts lower and lower. You think you see something move near the door, a shadow that flits too quickly, or maybe just the wind rattling a loose shutter. You grip the axe. Wait. Listen. Nothing. You don't sleep. You just sit there, eyes burning, thoughts buzzing like flies. You try to remember his laugh. You try to remember the last thing he said. You think it was about the soup. You wish it had been something else. By morning, the candle is spent, a puddle of hardened wax on the table. Your brother is still there. Cold. Still! You don't look directly at him. Not anymore. You tend the fire, you boil snow, you eat, and you survive. Because that's all that's left now. You don't bury him right away. No one does this time of year. The ground is frozen solid, so hard it clangs when you strike it with a shovel. And anyway, your only shovel's blade cracked last month, when you tried to dig the latrine deeper. Now it's just an awkward metal tongue attached to a splintered handle that serves better as a club than a tool. You keep it by the door for protection, not digging. So your brother stays where he is, wrapped in every spare cloth, tucked in the corner like he's sleeping. You start calling it his corner without even meaning to. By the 3rd day, the girl avoids looking in that direction altogether. You've noticed she only sits facing the hearth now, her back hunched and her knees pulled up close. She eats whatever you hand her and sleeps like a bird, resting in fits, eyes fluttering half open at every noise. Your mother, on the other hand, seems to have folded into herself. She moves more slowly now, like her body weighs double what it used to. She hasn't spoken your brother's name since the morning he died, but you've caught her pausing near the corner, her hand shaking as she adjusts the blankets, like she's trying to tuck him in one last time. The house is silent more often than not the peaceful kind of silence like snowfall or sleeping animals. This is the brittle kind, dry and thin, the kind that creaks behind your ears and makes you hear things that aren't there. The fire is loud now. Every snap of wood echoes through the room. Every shift in the coals sounds like a voice. You pretend not to notice. You stir the pot more often than necessary just to have a sound to fill the space. You're not the only one with the problem. The girl asked you yesterday if you could hear the whispering, and when you said no, she just nodded like she already knew you were lying. There's a tradition, half custom, half necessity, of keeping the dead close until the earth softens. Let the frost hold them, the saying goes. They'll wait for the thaw. It's a grim comfort, as if winter itself has taken custody of the dead, promising to return them when the time is right. You tell yourself he's safer here, where you can watch over him, where he's warm, or at least not alone, but you also know what the smell will become when that safety runs out. Another old superstition crawls into your thoughts, that keeping a body too long traps the soul inside the house. Not exactly a ghost, but a residue, a weight, something that tugs at the corners of your thoughts, presses on your chest when you try to sleep. You wonder if that's what's causing the headaches, the constant heaviness in your limbs, the dreams, or maybe it's just hunger. You're not really sure where the line is anymore. You dream of him, not as he was, but as he is now. Eyes half-lidded, lips dry, fingers still curled. In your dreams, he stands in the corner, where the cot is, watching the fire with an empty stare. Sometimes he tries to speak, but nothing comes out. Sometimes he smiles. Those are the worst dreams. Outside, the snow piles higher. It's not soft anymore, not the storybook flakes you see in tapestries or southern poems. It's dense and heavy, crusted with ice that tears your hands when you try to break through it. It reflects the light in strange ways, like glass. When the sun hits it rarely, it blinds you. When the clouds return, it swallows everything in dull grey. You tried digging again today, just to see. You chose a spot near the tree line where the ground looked softer. It wasn't. The blade bounced off the earth like it was iron. You managed a few inches before the effort became pointless. Your fingers went numb, you left the shovel buried like a marker. It looks absurd out there, sticking up from the snow like a flag on the moon. You've begun to ration firewood more strictly. 2 small logs in the morning, 1 mid-afternoon and 2 again at night. The fire never gets roaring anymore, just a steady flicker that glows enough to cook with and keeps your breath from fogging too heavily inside. You wear 3 layers of clothes indoors now. The girl wraps her feet in rags, even when she sleeps. The fooders' situation is, to put it lightly, dire. You're down to bits of dried bark, some old lard, a few mould-dappled carrots, and the sour remnants of a cabbage that might qualify as a sentient being by now. Your mother suggests boiling bones again, even though the marrow's long gone. Just for the flavour, she says, just to feel like you're cooking something real. You've stopped pretending to enjoy meals. You chew in silence, swallow without tasting, and try not to gag when the bitterness lingers. The girl chews even slower than you, and she keeps looking at your brother's corner while she eats, like she's waiting for him to ask for a share. You start closing the blanket over his face when you serve food. The priest hasn't been seen in over a week. The chapel's roof collapsed after a freeze-thaw cycle broke the beams. You heard it at night, a long groan, then a crash, and then silence. No bell since, no sermons, no one asking you to confess your sins. Not that you would. Your worst ones are about to be committed, not remembered. You think about eating the candle, just once. Just for the sweetness of wax. Then you remember how much you need the light. There's one final debate that sometimes comes up in the darker corners of your mind. How long do you wait before you stop burying at all? Not because you're cold or lazy, but because what's the point? If no one comes in spring, if the whole village is bones under snow, who are the graves for? You catch yourself thinking things like this more and more. You don't like it, but you don't stop either. That night, you light a candle beside your brother again. Just for a moment, you whisper his name, not to call him, but to remember how it feels in your mouth. You say it twice, 3 times. Then you blow out the flame and sit in the dark. You dream of warmth, a crowded table, laughter. You wake up with your hands clenched and your face wet. Tomorrow, you'll try to dig again, boss. Just a little deeper. Silence becomes its own kind of sound. It has weight, texture, even tone, like the difference between the quiet of snow falling and the quiet of something watching you. Today's silence is the second kind. Not the peaceful hush of a sleeping world, but the oppressive stillness of waiting. Even the fire seems afraid to crackle too loudly. You find yourself moving slower, stepping softer, as if something might hear you if you're not careful. The cot in the corner hasn't changed. Your brother is still wrapped tight in the worn blanket, a pale hand now poking out from beneath the edge. You try not to look at it. It's the hand that gets you. Not the face, not the stillness, just the hand. You don't know why. Maybe because it used to reach for food, for you, for a mug of water, and now it reaches for nothing. Your mother hasn't said a word all morning. She sits near the fire with her back to him, eyes unfocused, lips slightly parted. The girl keeps busy. She sweeps, she stirs the pot, she sharpens sticks to a pointless edge. She says it's to keep animals away, but there's nothing left to defend. No food, no meat, not even enough cloth to wrap another dead body if it comes to that. And it might. You've started checking your mother's breath when she dozes. You tried digging again at dawn. The shovel's handle snapped this time. You held the broken wood in your hands like it had betrayed you. You didn't scream, you didn't cry, you just dropped it into the snow and stared at the sky. It was the clearest you'd seen it in weeks, blue, sharp, cloudless. It made everything colder. With the shovel gone, you know the truth now. You're not burying him. Not until the thaw, if there is one. You begin to understand why people leave bodies in the forest. Why some are never found. There are places in the world where the snow folds over the dead and doesn't return them for centuries. You wonder what that's like, sleeping under the earth without ever rotting. You spend more time inside now, pacing slowly, checking the windows, adjusting the fire. The wind outside makes the walls moan like something alive. And sometimes, only sometimes, you think you hear footsteps crunching in the snow, slow and deliberate. But when you look, there's nothing. Just white emptiness and tree shadows. Your sleep is getting worse. Last night you dreamt of the fire dying. Not just fading, but dying, snuffed like a candle in an open field. You reached for it, and your hands turned to ice. The frost climbed your arms, your chest, your face. You woke gasping, breath clouding the air, the fire down to 2 glowing coals more. You added wood with shaking fingers and watched it catch like it was saving your life. That day the girl tells you about the silence in her old home. She says it came before the fever, a long quiet that settled over everything, even the animals, like the air knew before the people did. Then her father stopped speaking, then her mother, then the food ran out. Her sister starved first. She says this like she's talking about the weather. You ask how she survived. She shrugs. I left. You don't ask how long she waited. You already know. There's a fringe belief you've heard, never from priests, only old hunters, that winter isn't just a season, but a being, a force that moves, chooses, feeds. Some say it has a face, others a voice. Others say it's faceless but always watching. It doesn't kill because it's cruel, they say. It kills because it has to. Because that's what it is, a cycle, a hunger, an old god with white eyes and a breath that steals yours. You don't believe in that. Not really. But sometimes when you sit by the window and the cold presses against the glass like a hand, you wonder what it would say if it spoke. The fire has become the only thing in your life that responds to you. Feed it and it grows. Ignore it and it dies. You find yourself talking to it, softly, not full conversations, but little murmurs. There you go. That's it, stay with me. The girl never comments. She might do it too, the days are getting longer now, technically. You can feel it in the edges of the light, that strange hesitation before night returns. But it doesn't help. The sun doesn't warm anything. It's like a ghost of itself, present but powerless. You try to eat snow that afternoon, just a handful. You boil it first, add a pinch of salt, pretend it's broth. It isn't, but it tricks your stomach into thinking it's full for a few minutes. Then the hollow ache returns, sharper than before. The girl offers you her portion. You say no. She insists. You both end up eating half, watching each other across the fire like opponents in a slow game of survival. Your mother whispers something in her sleep again that night. You don't catch all of it, just the phrase, "They're in the walls." You freeze. Listen. Nothing. The house is still. You try to go back to sleep, but the words cling to you. Later, in the black hour just before dawn, you wake with your heart racing. There's a sound outside, scraping like claws on wood. You sit up, reach for the axe, but it stops. Silence returns. You wait. Nothing. You don't sleep again. In the morning, you find marks on the back door. Not deep, not fresh, but there, claw-like. Animal or not, it's a message. You start stacking furniture against the door at night. The girl watches without asking why, and through it all, your brother's still there in the corner, still wrapped in quiet. Still waiting. You don't speak his name anymore. Not because you've forgotten, because it hurts too much to remember. And then somehow, through the numb fog of rot and rations and creeping shadow, something resembling joy finds you. Not much. Just a sliver, a flicker, thin as a hair and just as fragile. But still, it finds you. It's morning and the snow has stopped falling for the first time in over a week. The sky isn't blue, let's not be ridiculous, but it's a lighter kind of grey, almost silvery. You don't notice at first busy boiling snow water for the day's bark gruel, but the girl does. She sits up straight near the hearth and whispers, "It's not snowing." You blink at her, then at the window, and realise she's right. You step outside just to feel it. The air is still biting, but not as sharp. The wind isn't cutting your ears in half. You don't feel like you're about to die just from being upright. And in that moment you breathe, really breathe, deep, painful, but real. And the air smells like pine and smoke and something else, something faint but unmistakable, thaw. Not warmth, no, but the possibility of it. Back inside you make a small celebration of it. You dig through the cupboard and find the end of a honeycomb, hardened and dry. You break off tiny shards and pass them out like you're sharing gold. The girl stares at hers like it's a jewel. She licks it slowly, reverently, like she doesn't want to lose the taste. Your mother eats hers quickly and doesn't say anything, but you see the way her shoulders settle, just a bit. You don't touch yours right away. You just hold it in your hand and remember what sweetness used to feel like. Later that day, you find an old pair of socks you'd forgotten at the bottom of the trunk. Wool, still mostly intact. You warm them by the fire, then pull them over your freezing feet. It's not just comfort, it's a small reclaiming of yourself. You're not just surviving anymore. You're insisting on something, on feeling warm, even briefly, on not being entirely defeated. You tell a story that night. It comes out of nowhere. Some tale from when you were little, about a fox who tricked a king into giving him his crown. The girl listens like it's sacred scripture, wide-eyed and barely blinking. Your mother chuckles once, soft, like she forgot she could. The story doesn't have an ending. You make one up and no one corrects you. Joy, you realise, doesn't feel like a burst of sunshine. It feels like remembering your name in a place where no one speaks, like the crackle of a fire at your back when you thought you were alone in the cold. It's a quiet thing. It doesn't scream or knock. It just appears in the small spaces where death hasn't yet settled. You find a lump of wax behind the woodpile, enough to patch the old candle you thought it was done. You melt it carefully over the fire and reshape the stub. Using a bit of string for a new wick, it gives you 3 more nights of light. It's the kind of miracle no one would write down, but it feels like magic all the same. There's this fringe idea some villagers used to talk about when the cold got deep, that joy itself was a weapon, that laughter could keep the frost at bay like fire, that the winter hated warmth of any kind, including the kind that comes from inside you. You always thought that was nonsense, but tonight, with your belly not quite as empty and your mother humming again, you're not so sure. Even in the middle of everything, your brother still in the corner, the food nearly gone, the wood still watching, you laugh, just once. Something the girl says about the way your hair sticks out when you sleep is not even funny, but it feels good. Like striking flint and seeing a spark, even if the fire doesn't catch yet. There's a long-standing scholarly debate, at least among those who write in warm monasteries with full pantries, about the psychological impact of seasonal starvation. Some believe the brain enters a different mode, tuning into things it normally ignores. Others say it's just the body conserving energy by shutting down joy entirely. You wonder if the truth is somewhere in between, that maybe starvation strips away the noise and leaves only the essentials. Fear, hunger, love, memory. You still feel all 4, sometimes in the same breath. That night the girl shows you a charm her mother gave her before they fell ill, a bit of carved bone with a sun etched into one side. It's supposed to bring spring, she says, or keep it in your pocket. You hold it in your palm for a moment, warm from her hand, and try to believe in it. It's silly, pointless, and you'd fight anyone who tried to take it from you. You find a game near the end of the night, an old one you used to play with your brother. You mark spots on the table with coal and flick a stone between them, trying to hit targets. The girl is bad at it. Your mother is worse. You win 3 rounds in a row and pretend not to care. Then you let the girl win, and she grins for the first time since arriving. Not a full smile, but enough. Outside the wind is still. The snow hasn't returned. The trees are motionless. The quiet feels different tonight, less ominous, more like a pause. You light the candle and let it burn longer than usual. You even let it drip wax down the sides, puddling onto the table like it's allowed to waste a little. The fire pops cheerfully in the hearth. Your toes are warm in wool. Your hands don't shake when you ladle out the night's soup, such as it is. And when you sleep, you don't dream of your brother or the wolves or the cold fingers scratching at the walls. You dream of green, just that, green. February arrives without warning, like a thief who lets the door swing open behind him. You don't notice it at first. There's no clear signal. The snow doesn't suddenly melt, no miraculous thaw, no birdsong. It's still cold, the fire still needs feeding, and your bones still ache when you stand, but something shifts in the air. The cold feels different now, less like a predator, more like a weight. Still crushing, yes, but no longer sharpening its claws, more tired than hungry, but with that shift comes a new danger. You're tired too, so tired. Not just your limbs, but your mind. Your thoughts slip like wet stones. Sometimes you forget what you were doing halfway through doing it. You pour water into a pot, then forget to light the fire. You start sewing a tear in your cloak and stare at the needle for 10 minutes without threading it. The girl starts pointing things out gently, like a guide leading a sleepwalker. You don't even feel embarrassed. You just nod and thank her. Your mother's face looks drawn tight. She's thinner now, bonier in the cheeks, hands more skeletal. Her movements have slowed, but not from sickness, just weariness. Her eyes drift often toward the corner where your brother lies. Still wrapped, still untouched. The smell has faded, oddly. Not gone, just dulled. Maybe your senses are too far gone to notice it. Maybe the cold is preserving him better than you expected. Either way, he stays there. And the house makes space around him like furniture rearranged for a permanent guest. The girl has started talking in her sleep. Soft mutters, sometimes in her own language, a regional dialect from farther south that you can't quite place. Sometimes it's just noises, half words or maybe just the wind stealing her breath. Once she says your name, not in fear, just like she's asking a question. You don't respond, you just watch the fire flicker and listen. Sleep becomes stranger. You lie down, but your mind doesn't shut off. Or sometimes it does and you wake unsure of how much time passed. You dream vividly now, so real it's hard to tell waking from dreaming. One night you dream the house is full of people, your brother, the girl's family, neighbours you haven't seen in weeks, even the priest, all sitting at the table, eating bread, laughing. You can smell honey and feel the warmth of hands on your shoulders. Then you wake up and the house is dark, cold, warm, empty except for the 3 of you and the dying fire. Snow blindness is another problem. You'd heard about it before but never truly experienced it. The way the light bounces off the crust of snow outside, how it stings your eyes, how it stays behind your eyelids even after you shut them. You go out to collect sticks near the edge of the woods, and when you return, everything inside is washed in blue-white flashes. Your head throbs for hours after. There's an old story your grandmother told, about a woman who stayed too long in winter and began to forget who she was. The snow stole her name first, then her memories, then her voice. By the end, she couldn't speak or cry or even shiver. She just sat in the snow waiting for someone to remember her. That's why we keep saying each other's names in February, your grandmother said. To remind the snow, we're still here. You start saying your mother's name out loud once a day, just in case, and still the fire needs tending. Always the fire. It's smaller now, tighter. You feed it less, but more often, like nursing a wound. You've burned most of the furniture. 1 leg of the table, half the shelf, 2 chairs. The last chair goes today. You break it carefully, apologising as you snap the joints. The girl helps you carry the pieces like pallbearers at a tiny wooden funeral. You try to keep the rituals alive. Morning water, evening stories, 3 stones placed by the door to track how many days it's been since you last saw another person. You're up to 11. 11 days without a knock, a sound, a boot print in the snow that wasn't your own. The chapel bell hasn't rung, the village might still exist. You just don't know if anyone is still in it. The fringe theories come crawling back into your mind. Not the stories you believe in, not really, but the ones you can't quite forget. That winter feeds on minds as much as bodies. That the silence is sentient. that February is when people start hearing things and mistaking them for prayers. You haven't heard anything. Not yet. But sometimes when you stir the fire, you swear it hums. Not a voice, not quite, but a vibration that settles in your chest like a second heartbeat. The girl finds an old scrap of wool and starts knitting. You didn't even know she knew how. Her fingers are clumsy, her loops uneven, but she doesn't stop. "It's for spring," she says, not looking up. You don't ask what it's supposed to be, you just let her work. Food is, well, it's no longer food in the traditional sense. The last of the lard went into a bark stew last night. You've moved on to pine resin, boiled twice and thinned with melted snow. It coats your throat and makes you cough, but it coats your stomach too, and that's all you care about. The girl chews twigs sometimes, just for the motion. The scholarly debate about seasonal psychosis, if you had access to books or even the priest's library, is hotly contested. Does the lack of sun affect your mind? Or is it the hunger? Or the endless repetition of surviving without ever truly living? You don't need a scholar to know the answer. Yes, it's all of it. It presses on you like snow on a roof until something cracks, and tonight you hear something crack, not in your mind, in the forest, a sharp, clean snap of wood, close. You freeze. The girl stops knitting, and your mother lifts her head. You all listen, nothing else, just the memory of sound. You sit with the axe in your lap again, just in case. You stare at the back door, you try not to blink too long. The fire burns low. The girl falls asleep with the half-knit wool still in her lap. Your mother hums, off-key, an old lullaby she used to sing in better seasons. You stay awake until the grey light of morning creeps in under the door, and only then do you finally lie down. But even then, you don't close your eyes. The church bell doesn't ring because there's no one left to ring it. You realise that sometime during the third week of February. It isn't a dramatic revelation, more like the quiet settling of a thought you'd been trying not to finish. It's been 20 days since you last saw another soul outside your own door, and the bell, once a steady heartbeat in the distance, has gone fully still. At first, you made excuses. The bell rope froze. Or the priest was sick, or maybe everyone was too snowed in to bother. But now you know. It's not that the bell can't ring, it's that there's no one left standing who would. You think about going to check, and the thought alone exhausts you. The chapel sits near the centre of the village, a walkable distance when the roads are clear. But they aren't. The snowbanks are shoulder high now, hard as stone, and any trail that once existed has been erased, devoured by ice and time. Even if you made it there, even if you hacked your way through with the axe and pure willpower, what would you find? A locked door, a cold altar, bodies. You start to notice what's missing. No more smoke rising from chimneys, no more distant sound of chickens clucking, children shouting, someone chopping wood. Even the wolves have stopped howling. Not because they're gone, you think, but because they've eaten it enough. You check for tracks in the snow every morning and they're always there, fresh. Big, sometimes disturbingly close to the house. One morning you find paw prints circling the back like something walked around 3 times before deciding not to knock. Your brother's body is still in the corner. You've stopped covering his hand. It's shriveled now, blue-grey and waxy, like an old root left too long in the sun. The blankets have fused together with damp and cold and time. You stopped lighting a candle near him days ago. You still speak his name, once a day, softly, Subsid. When no one else can hear, you don't know why. Maybe to remind the snow you remember him. Maybe to remind yourself. The fire almost goes out that morning. You'd been stretching the wood so thin, rationing so tightly, that you didn't realise the last log was already gone. You toss in a stool leg, a woven basket, and finally the wooden spoon your mother used to stir every pot since you were a child. It burns fast, leaving a thin curl of smoke that smells faintly like every meal you've ever eaten. You begin pulling nails from the walls, the beams are old and dry. You break them down piece by piece, only the ones that won't make the roof collapse. You know how to listen for tension in the wood now. One wrong pull and the rafters will cave in, bringing snow and sky down with them. It becomes a careful, measured ritual. Tap, test, snap, burn. The girl watches everything. She barely speaks anymore, but her eyes follow you constantly. She still has the half-knitted square, now curled and knotted from being handled so often. It's not anything useful, not a sock, not a glove, not even a scarf, just something to do with her hands, something to remind her she's still here. You envy her for that. Your mother sleeps most of the day now. She's stopped eating. You offer bark broth and boiled snow, but she only sips, barely. She murmurs names in her sleep, some you know, some you don't. At one point she calls you by your father's name. He's been dead for years. You correct her gently, she doesn't respond. You think about writing things down, a record, a journal, something to prove you were here, but there's no ink, no parchment. You start carving small symbols into the doorframe instead, one for each day survived past the day the bell stopped ringing. They're not numbers, just marks. You pretend they don't mean anything, but you know exactly how many there are. There's an old legend you remember, told in whispers around the fire in autumn, before the dark really took hold. They said when the bell stops ringing in a village, it means the land has been claimed, that the spirits of the cold, frost wraiths, snow widows, and pale-faced things with hollow eyes have finished circling and moved in. You laugh the first time the thought comes back to you, not because it's funny, but because you're so tired that even the old stories feel like they might be true now. There's scholarly speculation, somewhere, in books you'll never read, about what happens to human thought under extended sensory deprivation, starvation, isolation. The mind reshapes reality to protect itself, they say. You wonder if that's what's happening now. You wonder if the wolves were ever real, if the village was ever full, if this house was ever warm. And then one night you hear the bell. It's a single chime, soft, so distant you almost think it's in your head. But the girl hears it too. She sits up, eyes wide, lips parted. You both stare at the door. Then it comes again, just once, a low, dull bong like someone pulled the rope from deep underwater. You don't move. Neither does she. Your mother stirs but doesn't wake, then silence. The next morning you check the window. Nothing but white. White. You crack the door open and step outside just far enough to look up at the sky. No footprints, no sound, no movement. You don't mention it again, neither does the girl. But that day, you catch her tracing something into the soot of the hearthstone. A bell drawn with careful shaking lines. The fire burns weakly that night. You let it. You're tired. Not just in the body anymore. In your soul. The kind of tired that lives in your bones and behind your eyes. You lie down beside the hearth. Your mother sleeps across from you. The girl curls nearby with her knit square clutched like a stuffed doll. You all face the fire, like animals clinging to the last light. You dream of the chapel bell swinging gently in the wind, even though there's no wind. When you wake, you swear you still hear the echo. It happens quietly, as all important things seem to do now. The ice on the roof begins to drip, not much, just a single tentative plink into a dented tin pot you'd left out to catch condensation. You don't notice it right away. The fire crackles, your mother dozes, and the girl is curled in her corner, muttering to herself as she knots and reknots the stub of yarn she's been nursing for days. But then you hear it. That soft, impossibly alien sound of water falling. Not snow, not ice, not wind. Water. Liquid, moving, impossible water. You rush to the doorway and push it open a sliver. The sunlight is still a myth filtered through a sky the colour of wet wool. But something has changed. You can feel it in your chest. The air is heavy and wet, warmer than it has any right to be. Snow still covers everything in sight, blankets of it, drifts like frozen waves. But there are holes now, dips, sagging corners, as if winter is beginning to forget itself. Back inside, you announce it. It's starting. The girl looks up from her yarn with a blank stare. Your mother doesn't respond. You're not sure she hears anymore. You repeat it louder, and the girl's lips part, not a smile exactly, just a flicker of something. Hope, maybe, or the ache that comes before it. But hope is dangerous now. It's like letting your guard down in the middle of battle. The thaw is never kind. It doesn't arrive like a saviour. It tests you first. It softens the snow just enough to collapse your roof. It turns ice to water, then freezes again by morning, creating ruts sharp enough to break ankles. It floods cellars, rots food, and reveals everything that winter buried, including the dead. You check your brother's corner. The cloths are still stiff, but something has changed in the air. The scent is back. Not overwhelming, but undeniable, sweet and sour. You move his cot closer to the door, propping it against the wall near the draft so the air keeps moving. You consider trying to bury him again. Just the thought of digging exhausts you. But soon, if the ground keeps loosening, you hold on to that if like it's something solid. Later that morning, a beam in the ceiling creaks, then cracks. A single sliver of light slices through the shadow, followed by a thin trickle of melted snow. You throw a pot beneath it and curse under your breath. You knew this was coming. You told yourself you'd fix it before February, but now February's crawling toward its end and the roof is sagging above your heads like it's tired of holding on. You brace the beam with an old broomstick and pray it holds. There's no more wood to spare. Your mother drinks water today. First time in 2 days, she still doesn't eat, but she looks at you longer than usual. Her gaze almost lucid. He's waiting, she whispers, nodding toward your brother's corner. You don't ask what she means. You don't want to know if she sees things you don't. There's a fringe belief in the mountains to the east that during the early thaw, the dead stir, not because they're hungry, but because they're confused. Cold makes them still, preserves them like wax, but the warmth brings them back halfway. Not alive, not dead, just wrong. The story says that's why some villages keep their dead outside the walls, so they don't wander in. You spend part of the afternoon reinforcing the door. The girl surprises you with a drawing. Charcoal on a scrap of bark she peeled from the firewood. It's a crooked little house, your house, with smoke rising from the chimney and 3 stick figures outside, holding hands. You stare at it too long. She shrinks a little, like she expects you to scold her for wasting the charcoal. But you just nod. It's us? You ask. She nods. You almost ask where your brother is in the picture, but you don't. Instead, you let the picture sit near the hearth, tucked between a cracked plate and the fire iron. That night, the thaw reveals something else. As you're gathering slush to boil, you spot a shape in the snow near the tree line. Not an animal, not a button, a bundle, cloth. You stare at it for too long before you realise it's a body, small, curled, partially uncovered by the melting snow. Whoever it was had been there a while, long enough to be forgotten. You don't go closer. You just nod, like you're acknowledging someone in passing. You've seen death before. One more doesn't change anything. The house drips in at least 5 places now. You shift pots and bowls to catch them all. Some of the water you drink, some you pour over your hands and rub away days of sweat and smoke. It doesn't clean you, but it reminds you what cleanliness is and that you still exist. That night, the fire flickers dangerously low. You've burned everything but the bench. You argue with yourself about it. The bench has been part of the house for as long as you can remember. It's where your brother sat when he carved wooden birds. It's where your mother used to sit while sewing. You sit there now, tracing old knife scratches. Then you stand and feed it to the fire. It burns hot and bright. The room feels alive again for an hour. You sit with the girl and sip pine tea, or you tell her another story. This one's nonsense. Something about a bear that falls asleep under a hill and wakes up in a castle made of snow. She laughs at the ending, even though it doesn't make sense. You laugh too because it's contagious. Your mother opens her eyes just briefly and smiles. It's enough. Later, you lie awake listening to the drips from the ceiling. They come like a slow, steady heartbeat, and somewhere out there, past the trees and the snow and the bones, something is changing. You don't know what's coming, but it's not more winter, and for now, that's enough to keep you breathing. The world turns brown. It happens slowly, like a painting fading under too much sun, and then all at once, like someone yanked a curtain back and revealed just how filthy everything really is. The snow doesn't melt neatly. It doesn't pull back with grace and dignity. It sags, it sloughs, it rots. What once glittered under moonlight now clings in wet grey lumps to the sides of buildings, streaked with soot, mud, and things you'd rather not name. The beauty of the white has gone, replaced by a mess of slush and filth and stinking runoff that soaks into every crack. The yard is a swamp. You step out in the morning and your boot sinks ankle deep in a puddle of brownish black melt. You pull it free with a sickening schlorp. The kind of sound you associate with a clogged drain or a dying thing trying to breathe. Your foot is soaked, and you know the boot will never dry properly again. It squelches with every step. You don't even curse, you're past that now. The village is visible again, if you can call it that. The houses, once buried in drifts, now hunch like beaten animals, roofs bowed under the weight they carried, walls caked in old snowmelt. Some are broken completely, missing beams, doors hanging off hinges, windows shattered by frost and wind. You walk past 3 in silence. No smoke, no sound, no footprints. You don't knock. One house has its door wide open. Inside, you glimpse a chair turned over, a pot cracked in 2, something bundled in the corner that you can't bring yourself to examine. You shut the door out of habit, out of respect, out of fear. The air is wet now, but not in a cleansing way. It's heavy with the smell of old wood, mildew and rot. Everything that was frozen has begun to breathe again, and what it's breathing out is not good. You find a bucket of potatoes in the cellar, forgotten, buried in the corner. You lift the lid and nearly retch. They've gone to mush, covered in green fuzz and grey ooze. One sloshes out like a dead slug. You cover it again quickly and leave it. You can't even throw it out. There's nowhere left that isn't already foul. Inside the house you try to clean. Not properly. Not like you used to, back when clean meant fresh water and soap, but you start dragging things outside. Mats, bundles of rags, bones. You sweep, you open windows. The air smells like wet fur and smoke and the inside of a sick animal. You try to ignore it. You wipe down the table, scrub the soot off the hearthstones. You find mouse droppings in a pile near the shelf. You don't care. Your mother doesn't move much now. She's barely awake. She drinks water when you lift it to her mouth. Sometimes she mutters names. Yours, your brother's. Once the girl's, once a name you've never heard before. The girl tries to help, tucking cloths around her, placing a warm stone at her feet, whispering to her. But your mother doesn't respond. You think about death differently now, not as a terror, more like a coat someone puts on when they're too cold to keep shivering. You don't want her to go, but you also understand why she might. The girl is still knitting. It's barely anything, just a twisted band of uneven stitches, but she's gotten better. Her fingers are surer. She says it's for spring, for when it gets warmer. She's said that every day. You don't ask her what happens if spring never comes. You've both avoided that question. You pull up floorboards to feed the fire. The wood is damp, but it burns eventually. It hisses and smokes and fills the room with a bitter scent. But it's warmth. The fire is all you have left that still responds to effort. Everything else, hunger, rot, your mother's hollow eyes, stares back without flinching. There's a fringe tale you recall, though you're not sure where from, about the March spirits. Not gods, not ghosts, just travellers. Ragged, thin and muddy. They come during the thaw, walking from house to house, peering inside, judging whether the home has endured with dignity. If it has, they bless it. If not, they whisper. You're not told what the whispers do, just that they last a long time. You mop the floor, just in case. You find your brother's knife under the bench, forgotten during the worst of the freeze. You turn it over in your hand, remembering how he'd carved animals from driftwood with it. The blade is rusted now, useless. You almost toss it into the fire. But instead you tuck it into your belt. Not for use, just to carry something of him. The melting continues. The snow on the roof collapses in waves, falling like wet thunder, knocking clumps of ice down onto the porch, and one piece crashes through the storage shed, splintering it beyond repair. You don't even go out to check the damage. There's nothing in there anymore but splinters and memory. Water leaks from the ceiling, from the corners, from the cracks in the walls. You catch what you can, mop what you can't. It's not enough. You hang wet rags by the fire trying to dry them before they mould. Everything smells like wet dog and smoked meat. But there's no dog and no meat. That evening, the girl brings in a handful of something green. Tiny shoots poking from the mud near the base of the tree line. Is it food? She asks. You don't know. You try a leaf. It's bitter, but it doesn't burn your tongue. Maybe it's edible. Maybe not. You split it between you anyway, like a gift from the gods. Your mother doesn't eat hers. You place it near her mouth. She turns away. You sit by the fire that night in wet clothes and muddy boots. Smelling like the end of the world. The girl is asleep, curled beside the embers. Your mother breathes faintly in the shadows. You run a finger along the carvings in the doorframe, the marks you made to count the days. You've lost count now, but it doesn't matter. Outside, the world is falling apart. Inside, you're still here, and for tonight, that's enough. You don't know who threw the first rock. Maybe it wasn't a rock. Maybe it was a hammer or a pot or a stick, anything heavy and desperate enough to shatter the illusion that the manor still held order. All you know is that by the time you made it to the top of the hill, the door to the grain store had been broken in, and the crowd outside wasn't bothering with whispers anymore. No more begging, no more bargaining. This is what happens when people stop believing that waiting quietly will save them. The manor house looms dark and quiet above the road. Its shutters latch tight. No smoke from the chimneys. No voices. If the steward is still inside, he isn't answering. Or maybe he's already gone. Maybe he fled before the last storm, his cart loaded with flour and dried meat, while the rest of you huddled under leaking roofs, burning your furniture for heat. You imagine him in a stone cottage somewhere down south, feet up, wine in hand, telling himself he tried. The others is don't wait for orders. The barn doors are forced open with a cracked beam. You stand off to the side and watch them go inside one by one, moving like scavengers picking at the bones of a dead beast. Some carry baskets, some drag empty sacks. One woman you recognise, the baker's sister, has a broken chair strapped to her back, using it like a pack frame. They are not even shouting anymore, just working. You wait a long time before stepping inside, not out of fear, just caution. Something about the quiet makes your skin crawl. The storeroom smells like old grain, mouse droppings and wood rot. The floor is covered in debris, split sacks, footprints in flour, broken jars. You pick your way through the mess until you find what you're looking for. Barley. Not much. Half a bag left behind in a corner. You kneel, scoop it into your shawl and tie the ends tight. You carry it like a baby back down the hill. The girl meets you at the door, her face unreadable. You hold out the bundle and she takes it silently. You've both run out of words for moments like this. Your mother doesn't wake when the smell of grain fills the room. She stirs, lips parting slightly, but her eyes stay closed. You sit beside her, holding her hand as the girl cooks a porridge so thin it barely counts. But it's warm, and it smells like something real. That night the village changes. The quiet breaks, doors that were shut for weeks open again. People emerge, blinking in the grey light. They share stories now about who's gone, who's not, who still has food and who doesn't. A few wear the expression of the newly fed. Flushed cheeks, trembling hands, eyes darting like prey that's forgotten how not to run. There's no joy in it, just momentum. Someone mentions that the steward's quarters were ransacked, not looted, ripped apart, clothes torn, cabinets smashed, even the beds burned for firewood. No one knows where he is. No one's asking too hard either. There's an old fringe rule in the village that people don't talk about. If someone disappears during a famine, you don't go looking. Not because it's impolite, because sometimes the answer is worse than the question. You trade a scoop of barley for a stick of tallow. Another scoop gets you a piece of dried fish, too sharp to chew but perfect to flavour soup. The barter returns quickly, like it was waiting just under the surface. People will do anything to feel useful again, even in a village half full of ghosts. Debate breaks out among the women in the square. Some say you should share everything now, pool it all together, eat as one. Others scoff. We tried that in December, one woman says. Half the village died with half a bowl in their bellies. You don't join the argument. You've got your barley, you've got your mother, still breathing. You're not feeling generous. The thaw continues, but it's messy. The snow no longer melts into clean puddles. It churns into sludge, grey and greasy with soot. Dead leaves rise from the muck, along with bones and broken tools. The path to the well is passable again, but barely. You carry water in the old wine bottles now, the bucket having split last week under the weight of ice. The house smells like people again. Sweat, damp, sickness. You'd grown so used to the cold sucking every scent from the air that the return of smell feels like a violation. The girl opens the windows when she can, though the wind is still sharp enough to sting. The fresh air helps, but it also carries the sound of coughing from the other houses, deep, wet, final. You feed your mother spoonfuls of porridge. She swallows, not much, but enough. She opens her eyes at dusk and says your name, clear, crisp. Her hand tightens around yours, then she falls asleep again. You sit there for an hour, not moving, afraid that if you do, it'll undo whatever that moment was. You can feel spring pressing at the edges of the world, not like a blooming flower, but like a boil trying to burst. It's ugly, raw. It smells bad, but it's real. Something is shifting, you're shifting with it. That night, you and the girl light the candle together. You split the last of the fish, flavour the porridge with it, and eat in silence. When you're done, she places the knitted strip in your lap. You look at it. A wonky little loop, crooked and strange. For your wrist, she says. To remember. You slip it on, it itches, you love it. Outside, someone is playing music, a flute maybe, or something like it. Broken notes drifting through the night like memories. You stand at the window, eyes burning, and listen. The fire is low, but steady. Your mother breathes. The girl sleeps. You sit between them and stare into the coals, not thinking of food or wolves or cold, just surviving. One more night. It's almost nothing at first, a patch of green the size of your hand. peeking through the snow like it's testing the air for danger. You find it near the edge of the woods, where the drifts have thinned, and the sun, what little there is of it, sometimes reaches through the trees. At first, you think it's moss, but when you bend down, brushing the melting crust away with trembling fingers, you find the unmistakable jagged leaves of bittercress, sharp, small, bright as a memory you didn't know you missed. You pick it all, every single sprig. It doesn't matter that it's barely enough to fill your palm, or that it smells faintly of earth and animal. It's green, it's alive, and when you bring it back to the house holding it like a holy relic, the girl's eyes go wide. She doesn't say a word, just takes the leaves from your hands, rinses them carefully in a bowl of boiled water, and lays them out on a cracked plate like a feast. Your mother doesn't wake when you tell her about it, but her eyes flutter. Her mouth twitches at the smell. You crush one of the leaves between your fingers and dab it gently onto her lips. It's more ceremony than nourishment, but even ceremony feels like hope now. You each eat 2 leaves. That's all there is. The taste hits like lightning. Not pleasant, sharp, astringent, like pepper and metal and soil, but it's the taste of something. You chew slowly, eyes closed, letting it sting your tongue. It brings tears to your eyes, but you don't wipe them away. The girl grins. She makes a sound that might be a laugh. You haven't heard her laugh in so long you forget what it's supposed to sound like. Afterward, you both sit by the fire staring at the plate like more leaves might appear, if you just believe hard enough. Later you go back to the tree line. You bring a small knife and a basket, your hands trembling not from hunger, but from anticipation. You dig with your fingers, cut with care, search every patch of earth that isn't still frozen solid. You find more bittercress, a few strands of sorrel, even a violet still curled tight like it's not sure whether to trust the world again. This becomes your new ritual, foraging. For the first time in months, you leave the house not just to gather sticks or snow, but to hunt. Not for meat, not for warmth, but for life. And life is fighting back now. Weak and stubborn, sure, but it's there. Sprouting in little pockets, tucked beneath old logs and wind-battered stone. There's an old saying you remember your grandmother mumbling in her last years. When the green comes back, count the living. You never really understood it before, but now you do. Because when you return from the woods, breathless and mud-caked, you see your mother sitting upright. Not fully. Her back slumps, her hair's a mess, her lips cracked, but her eyes are open. She's watching the door, waiting. She says your name and it sounds clearer than it has in weeks. You kneel beside her and press your forehead to hers, and for the first time in forever, you feel something like the past. Like you're still someone's child, like the house is still a home. The girl brings a handful of dandelion green she found near the well, and you stew them with a pinch of barley. The broth is thin and sour, but it smells like food, not just survival. You all eat around the fire, not talking much, just chewing, nodding, existing. Your mother even smiles, just barely. Just enough. Outside, the world is disgusting, truly. The snow is almost gone now, but what's left is a sludge of mud, waste, mouldy leaves, and the kind of filth that only comes when everything finally starts to rot at once. The road is a stream, the yard is a puddle, your boots never dry. But you don't care, because now the air smells of things. Bad things, sure. Damp wood, old straw, wet ash, but also earth, and somewhere under all of it, green. You pass 2 neighbours on your way to the woods. The first is thin as a rake and missing a few fingers to frostbite. He nods and mutters something that might be a greeting. The second is a woman you thought was dead. She's wearing a sheet for a cloak and dragging a sled with an empty sack on it. You share a few bittercress leaves with her. She doesn't smile, but she thanks you with a look you can't quite hold. People are coming out of their homes again, like bugs from under stones, slowly, wary, blinking against the grey daylight. They don't talk much, not yet. They look around like the world might vanish if they stare too long. You understand that. There's a fringe belief in your village that the first green thing you eat each year steals a bit of winter from your body. That it carries the cold away one bite at a time. You want that to be true. You want to believe that with every leaf, every root, every stubborn weed you chew, something inside you grows back, something small but real. The fire is easier to feed now. You've salvaged wood from the collapsed shed. You dried it by the hearth, turned it, rotated it like loaves in an oven. The smoke smells sweet again, not desperate. It no longer clings to you like a curse. You mend your mother's blanket, just a few stitches. The girl watches, then helps. She's grown quieter now, but not in a broken way. She watches the window more, as if expecting someone to come walking up the path any minute. You know better, but you don't tell her that. Let her keep whatever hope she wants. Let her imagine spring has perfect timing. That night the candle burns slow and even. The air in the house doesn't hurt your lungs. Your mother dozes without coughing. The girl finishes her knitted loop and starts another. You sit near the hearth, carving a handle for a spoon, not because you need it, just to make something. Before bed, said, you step outside one more time. The stars are out, barely. The ground squelches beneath your boots. But there, by the base of the tree near the gate, a small patch of green glows under the moonlight. You crouch, fingers brushing the leaves. You don't pick them, not yet. You smile just barely and whisper, "You're late." You don't realise how loud the birds are until they've been at it for hours. It starts with one, sharp, distant, confused, like it isn't sure it remembers how to sing. Then another joins, then a third, and before long the entire forest is chirping, whistling, trilling, in a chaos of sound so wild and strange that you almost drop your basket of greens when you hear it. It's not that the birds are singing, it's that they are at all. After months of silence, the noise feels like an alarm bell. You stand in the doorway of the house, blinking against the cloudy daylight, and listen to the sky like it's telling you a secret. There's motion now, not just in the branches where buds have started to show, but in the very air. It's warmer too, still damp, still sharp in the mornings, but the kind of sharp that smells like wet bark and moss instead of ash and rot. You can breathe without seeing your breath. That alone feels like witchcraft. Inside, the house feels smaller than it used to. Not in a bad way, more like a cocoon you're finally starting to grow out of. The walls are still streaked with soot. The roof still drips in 2 places, but the fire doesn't need to burn all day now. You light it only in the mornings and evenings, letting it go cold by noon. The girl keeps the hearth clean, sweeping ash into neat little piles that she scatters into the garden soil you're slowly preparing. Yes, garden. That word's back now, like a friend who left without explanation and suddenly shows up at your door with a grin and a loaf of bread. You cleared the snow away from the old garden bed last week, pulling up blackened roots, broken stakes, and the curled skeletons of last year's plants. Now the soil is soft enough to dig again. You don't have seeds, not really, just the scraps you saved. Some dried peas, a few sprouting onions, 1 or 2 shriveled carrot tops. It's not much, but it's something to put your hands into, something to ask the earth for. Your mother sits outside now, not long, just an hour or 2 when the sun hits the stoop. You wrap her in every blanket you own, prop her up with pillows, and let her watch the trees. Her eyes follow the wind. She says little, she eats more. She's still gaunt, her skin pale and papery, but there's colour in her lips again. And when you give her a spoonful of thin nettle soup, she smiles, not because it tastes good, but because she remembers what eating is for. The girl has found her voice again. She hums mostly, soft little songs with no clear tune, but rhythmic and hopeful. She doesn't say much, but when she does, it's in full sentences again. She tells you she wants to see a field, just a field, nothing big. Just open space with grass and sky and maybe a few birds overhead. You tell her you'll take her as soon as the road clears, and the road is clearing. Not quickly. There are still puddles the size of bathtubs, mud that will eat your boots, and trees that cracked and fell like thunder during the final frost. But it's walkable. You follow it as far as the old mill just to test it, and come back with your legs caked in muck and your spirits light. You saw a frog for God's sake, a real living frog, sitting in a puddle like it had been waiting there all winter just for you. The village is rebuilding, slowly, carefully. Doors that had been shut for months are open now, propped with sticks to let the air in. People scrub walls with rags, patch holes in roofs, argue over how to fix fences that sag with wet wood. There's a weird kind of joy in it. Not loud, not even happy, exactly, but communal. You nod at each other now. You help carry water. Someone hands you a bundle of rags to use as kindling and asks for nothing in return. There's a funeral that week, one of the last, a boy who didn't survive the thaw. He made it through the hunger, the sickness, the worst of the cold, but not the first infection from bad water. His parents wrap him in linen and lay him in the ground near the chapel, which is finally being used again. The priest looks 20 years older, but his voice doesn't shake during the prayer. People cry, people sing, people shovel dirt back over the grave with bare hands. You do too. That night you bury your brother. The ground is soft enough now. You do it quietly, without ceremony, under the twisted old pine behind the house. The girl helps you dig. Your mother watches from the window, her hand pressed to the glass. You place a carved stone over the grave and say his name 3 times. Then you go back inside and don't talk for the rest of the evening. There's a fringe tradition that says spring doesn't really start until you've buried your dead, that the world won't make room for new life until it's sure you've laid the old to rest. You don't know if it's true, but the next morning you find a robin hopping along the fence, tilting its head at you like it's been waiting for you to notice it. You laugh softly, startling the girl, who nearly drops the pot she's holding. Then she laughs too. The sound cracks something open in the room, something dry and old and long locked up. You plant the peas that afternoon, not because you're sure they'll grow, but because if they do, it means you stayed long enough to see it. That night, you open every window and let the air pour in. It smells like damp soil, wood smoke, moss, and new things not yet named. You sit by the fire and realise, for the first time in months, you're not just surviving anymore. You're living. The worms are back. You notice them in the garden bed while turning over the soil, plump, pink, wriggling things sliding through the damp earth like they never left. It shouldn't make you as happy as it does, but you drop to your knees in the mud and just watch them for a long while, your hands still halfway buried in the black soil. The worms mean something. They mean the ground is warm enough, alive enough, to feel awake enough to breathe again. They mean things are happening beneath the surface. And maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one rising out of the dark. You dig until your fingers go numb, but not from cold, from work. Honest, back-breaking, finger-aching work. That kind of numbness is welcome. It's not the deadened pain of frostbite or starvation. It's a kind of buzz, a fullness in the hands that remind you what muscles are for. You forget how much you missed feeling useful. Digging, pulling weeds, setting rocks in neat little rows along the edge of the plot. It doesn't feed anyone. Not yet. But it feels like preparing a table. Back inside, the girl helps your mother sit upright on her own. Not propped, not held, just sitting. Her hair's still limp and grey, and her shoulders look like they might blow away in a breeze. But she's alive. And she's watching the garden now too. You wonder what she's thinking as she sits by the window, hands folded in her lap, gaze fixed on the rows of freshly turned soil like a woman watching the sea for ships that left a long time ago. The girl hums while she mends your tunic. She's better at sewing now. Her stitches are tight and even. She says she's been dreaming of bread, fresh, hot, dripping with honey, and that she almost cried when she woke up and remembered the only thing left in the cupboard is boiled roots. You tell her one of your dreams in return, about a table full of food where your brother sits across from you grinning with barley in his beard. You both pretend not to notice how quiet you get after that. The neighbours are planting now too. You see them hunched over the plots, crouched in rows, sharing tools, seeds, scraps of cloth to mark corners. The village feels like a chest cracking open after a long suffocation. The sound of shovels in dirt. The soft talk of people planning weeks ahead instead of hours. It's also mundane. It's also miraculous. Someone repairs the chapel roof. You watch them from the path one morning, standing sore on a crooked ladder with one boot held together by twine, hammering crooked nails into warped wood like they're building a cathedral. When they finish, they climb down and nod at you. You nod back. That's enough. The priest holds his first proper service again. You don't go, not because you've stopped believing, but because you already have your own rituals now. Your own prayers whispered into dirt. Names spoken to the fire, meals eaten in silence and in hope. But you hear the singing from the house, faint and quavering, voices straining together like threads pulled tight. No one sounds sure, but they're trying. There's a strange kind of joy in decay. You notice it as the last of the snow rots away in the ditches and the moss takes hold of the stones again. Death is still here, but it's looser now, softer, less like a hunter, more like a shadow finally learning when to back off. You find a skeleton in the woods, a fox maybe, bones picked clean and curled around itself in a frozen coil. You bury it under a flat stone without thinking too hard about why. You find things as the land thaws. A bent spoon, a child's shoe, a jawbone, a book with no cover. It's like the earth is exhaling, coughing up all the forgotten things it choked on during winter. You leave most of it where it lies, but you take the spoon, you polish it, use it to stir nettle broth that night. The girl calls it your treasure. You don't tell her this, but you think the village is haunted now, not in a frightening way, but in the way that every tree and corner and creaking plank remembers something. Who lived here? Who died? Who didn't get a proper grave? The wind sounds different now, more like a whispering than a howl. Sometimes walking the road, you feel like someone is walking just behind you. But you never turn around, you just keep moving forward, step by step. There's a scholarly theory, only half accepted by the ones who still care about old texts and quiet speculation, that communities remember things. Not just people, but places, villages, fields, roads. That when enough pain happens in one spot, it lingers, soaked into the ground like blood in wool. Maybe it explains why the wind changes direction around the old well. Maybe it doesn't. You don't need a theory, you live it. You hold a tiny ceremony for your brother. Just you and the girl, standing at the grave with 2 candles and a cup of broth. You say his name aloud. You tell one of his old stories, something ridiculous about a pig in a church that made your mother laugh years ago. Then you leave the cup on the stone and walk back home. The wind doesn't blow it over. You check the next morning. It's still there. The garden sprouts. One day, nothing. The next, little green nubs pushing through the soil like they're late to a party. You gasp when you see them. Just stop mid-step and squat down to stare. The girl laughs behind you. "I told you they'd come," she says. You don't speak. You reach down, not to pick them, just to touch the leaves with one trembling fingertip. They're real. They're alive. You whisper, thank you, and you're not sure if it's to the plant, the earth, your brother, or just to the fact that something still grows at all. That night you eat dandelion greens and roasted roots. The house smells warm, earthy. Your mother hums while she dozes. The girl sits by the fire, knitting something longer this time, something that might one day be a scarf. You carve another spoon, because 2 feels more hopeful than 1. When you lie down, you sleep deeply. No dreams of hunger, no wind at the door, just the soft creak of settling walls and the heartbeat of coals in the hearth. And in the morning you hear the birds again. This time you smile before you even open your eyes. The day you finally take the path to the river, it feels like trespassing into a new world. The snow's completely gone now, except in the deepest shadows where it clings to stone like a forgotten curse. But the rest of the land has softened, unfurled and breathed. You walk slowly, almost reverently, boots squelching through thick mud, the air smelling of wet bark and moss. The girl walks ahead of you, arms swinging, her knitted loop now worn like a badge around her wrist. Her steps are lighter now, no longer measured in survival, but in curiosity. The trees are budding, little bursts of green on every branch, hesitant but determined. 1,000 shades of it, from pale yellow-green to deep emerald. The birds are louder, bold even. They sing like they have something to prove. The sound fills the woods, echoing off trunks and rocks and your very bones. It's almost too much. After so much silence, your ears feel stretched by it. You haven't been to the river since early autumn. You weren't sure it still existed. In winter, it vanished entirely beneath a crust of ice and snow. But now, as you reach the clearing where the water cuts through the land, it greets you like an old friend that never left, just changed its name for a while. The current is slow but steady, carrying leaves and twigs and a cold silver shine that you'd forgotten water could have when it moves. The girl takes off her shoes and steps in first, wincing at the chill but laughing all the same. You follow, slower, letting the shock of cold crawl up your ankles and settle deep in your legs. It hurts, but it's the good kind. The kind that reminds you you're alive. You both wade to a rock in the centre, sit down, and let the water run past your knees like it's washing the last of winter off you. The conversation drifts like the river. You talk about what you'll grow this year, real plans, not just hungry hopes. Potatoes, cabbage, peas, if the ones you planted take root. You talk about the abandoned houses in the village and who might return. Some already have, others you suspect never will. You talk about the priest who's begun teaching children again in the Fierce Chapel in the afternoons, reading stories from water-damaged books with a voice so tired it sounds like prayer. You don't talk about your brother, or your mother's long illness, or the weeks when you barely spoke at all. But it's all there, folded quietly into the spaces between your words. You don't need to say it. The river knows, the trees know, and you know each other too well to pick up wounds that are finally closing. There's a moment when the wind moves through the clearing just right, rustling every branch, rippling the water's surface, even brushing your hair back from your face. The girl looks up at the sky and says, "It doesn't feel haunted anymore." You nod. She's right. The air is lighter. The silence is gone. The cold doesn't creep into your bones like a threat. For the first time you realize you haven't thought about dying in days. Back at the house, your mother is waiting at the door, standing, leaning heavily on the frame, but standing. You rush to help Eos, but she shakes her head. "Just wanted to feel the sun," she says. Her voice is rough, but steady. You bring her a stool and she sits outside while you and the girl bring in the kindling, the bundle of wild greens, and the 2 stones you carried back from the river, not for any reason other than they felt good to touch. You make soup that night with nettles, early spring onion, and 1 tiny potato you bartered from the farmer up the hill. You serve it in mismatched bowls, still cracked, still soot-stained, but the steam smells like something worth living for. There's a knock at the door just after dusk. It's the blacksmith's wife, her arm in a sling, her hair wild from wind. She's smiling. "We're having a gathering tomorrow," she says. "Not a feast, just a meal. Everyone brings something, no matter how small." You nod. You say yes. You tell her you'll bring greets and firewood. The girl adds that she'll bring her singing. The woman laughs. She says, "Good, we need it." That night, the girl hums a different tune, something slow, meandering. Your mother taps her fingers along to the rhythm. You sit by the fire, carving the final spoon, the one you've been shaping for days now. Not for eating, for giving. When you sleep, you dream of the village, not as it was during winter, but as it is now. A place of muddy roads, crooked fences, voices in the distance, someone laughing around a corner. You dream of green, not just plants, but life, possibility, rebirth. The next morning you wake before the sun, not because you're cold, not because you're hungry, just because you want to. You walk outside barefoot, feel the cold earth press into your soles, and breathe deep. The birds are already awake. A rabbit darts through the underbrush. You don't chase it. You look at the trees, the garden bed, the smoke curling from your neighbour's chimney, and you whisper to the sky, to the woods, to whoever is still listening, "I survived." You go back inside, smiling. Tomorrow will come, and you'll be here to see it. So, you made it. You walked barefoot through a winter that didn't care if you were strong or kind or clever. You watched the world vanish under white, one slow flake at a time, and came out the other side with your soul still stitched together. Frayed at the edges, sure, but whole. You learned how to scrape life from bark, how to stretch soup past what soup was ever meant to be, how to read the silence in someone's breath when words gave up. You carried grief like firewood, never too far from your body, always just enough to keep you warm and aching. You buried the ones who couldn't keep going, and you did it with hands too numb to tremble and a heart too exhausted to break in full, and yet you grieved. Not like a song, but like a drum. Low, steady, constant. You never let yourself forget. But you also remembered things. How to make broth from nothing, how to find green in grey places, how to share laughter even when it came out like a cough. You lit a candle on the worst night, not because it changed anything, but because you could, and when the sky finally softened and the trees exhaled, you stepped outside, not like a survivor clawing from a grave, but like someone who still had a name, a story, a purpose. The thaw didn't save you. You saved yourself, with cracked boots and one good spoon and the stubborn belief that spring would come. Not because it had to, but because you were still waiting. You watched a girl laugh again. You saw your mother sit in the sun. You planted peas with dirty hands and a heart full of ghosts and didn't flinch when the wind returned, because this time you were ready. And now you get to rest. For real. Not the brittle half-sleep of fear and cold, but a sleep that feels like forgiveness. Like moss under your back. Like a roof that holds. Like a breath that doesn't rattle in your chest. So close your eyes. You're warm, you're safe, you're home. Spring is outside the window, stretching its fingers. Let it wait.